Okay, are we ready, guys? Here we go. Okay, it is Thursday, January 6th, and this is the first meeting of the new year. Can everybody hear me? Just want to get quick, okay, great. All right, I'll call this meeting to order. Ryan, let's do roll call.
All right, Happy New Year. Mayor Godis.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman.
Here.
Councilor Wusso.
Present.
Councilor Kaut.
Here.
Councilor Davis. Councilor Stepp.
Yes.
Councilor Hershey.
Howdy.
All right, we have a quorum.
All right, I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there any agenda changes or conflicts for this evening's agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll go on to citizens appearing before council. These are for items that are not on the agenda. So if you see it on the agenda, that will be your appropriate time to comment. Anybody from the public? I see 43 people from the public. Potentially, some are staff. Okay, I don't see any hands. Okay, I will now close public comment for items not appearing on the agenda. I'll come and bring it back for council comments. Go ahead, Paula.
Sorry. Fast at raising my hands, can't unmute fast enough. I have a few things, so I'll try to run through them really quickly. My first one is I've gotten a number of applications to review as my role in boards and commissions. And my understanding, talking to city staff, is that the council decided not to do interviews until after we had our January 27th. And I'm asking for a little bit of maneuverability on that, just timing wise in my life. It would be easy to start scheduling those rather than waiting till afterwards for some of those positions that are coming up pretty quickly. So I'm going to council to make that request, if that's okay with you, to have a little flexibility on each of us deciding when to do interviews. That was my first one. Nodding heads, nothing. People will think about it. That's where I'm at right now. There was a comment from city council, from the city manager about not that much use of the water rates assistance, but I'd still like to put my voice out there that I think it's important that for low income residents, we still have that as an option moving into 2022. We don't know people's circumstances, and unless it has cost us a lot of money to kind of run that program, I see it as something that's a good community service that we're providing for people who cannot afford the higher water rates. I see Deborah raising her hand.
Yeah, and this is totally fine if council wants to do it. I understood the direction was 1 year only.
Right.
So if council wants to keep doing it, that's totally fine if the nonprofit still wants to do it. But I just need to be told that.
Right. So I just wanted to bring it to council's attention on something to consider. There was a concern or a letter that I got about not quite understanding of or let me put it this way, that some people had a difficulty not being able to use the street for snow removal out of their driveways because of limited access to places to put it. And it sounded like, in particular, in some of these more condensed downtown neighborhoods. And I was hoping that Matt just could to provide a little clarity, or somebody else on staff, on why we're doing that, in any options for a little bit of leeway there. So I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And the childcare issue, I'd like to keep front and center. And I know Deborah's working on this. And I just want to say, as a council person, that's a really important issue to me in 2022. And then the last one is, Deborah, I appreciate that you put the mask mandate in place, and I myself support it until we can feel that the public health department and the hospital feels like we're in a good place to remove that. So as a council person, in the past, we were the ones that made that decision, and I don't know if we want to make that a council decision here. Those are my 5 quick topics, which are very open-ended.
Okay, and Paula, you asked for kind of action on several of those.
I did, and I didn't know how you want to go through that process. Sometimes it's like, we'll put it out there and we'll bring it back in another session. And sometimes it's like, we have discussions right there. So what is the best method of moving forward? Do you want me to go back now that I've mentioned them all and pick them one by one and see head nods what people think? And I would start with the board interviews, because I do have a few that I'd like to kind of take care of in January.
Mr. Mayor, we have a large agenda. Can we take these up at another time? And maybe Paula, you could give us a heads up on these issues before a meeting. There are a lot of people waiting for things that they care about, Paula, and I'd like to move on.
So at least on that first agenda item, Paula, I guess my thought would be that, you know, we'd only be able to take it up at the next meeting anyway. So whether we take it up, whether we wait for the first meeting of February or the second meeting of January to take it up, it doesn't matter that much to me. And I guess I'd rather just continue to wait until we have that board. Just me personally, I'd love to see everybody else's kind of head nod or whatever. But to me, 2 weeks probably doesn't matter a whole lot. And that's just my opinion. But I'd love to get kind of a comment or a head nod from other folks.
I'd like to.
Yeah,
add
go
one
ahead.
comment. My one comment is that Shelley and I know Councillor Kaup and I have actually interviewed a few people, and they're just kind of in queue until we make a decision on the 27th on what direction we're going. So you could go that route. And then at that point, once we make the decision about where we're going with our boards and commissions, we could choose to vote them in at a later date and time. But that still, you know, doesn't prevent you from interviewing them.
That was really the direction I was hoping to go, is to get the interview
Yeah.
done. And then later, when we vote on it, we're ready to go. It's just kind of
Great.
my timing of trying to get a number of them in.
Is everyone comfortable with that?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I was actually going to bring up under my topics. There are 2 boards that I'd like to get the interviews done and the appointments made at our second meeting in January. Well, first of those is the FAB board. I don't think that's going away. And I think we should get that board moving on. They have grants they're going to start to look at, and there's a number of things going on there. The other one is the tourism board. As you know, they are moving to quarterly meetings. And I talked to Lisa Langer, and it would help her if we get those appointments done in January so that she can get the new people up to speed and begin working forward on those issues. And I've got other council comments, so I know you took my hand down, but I was commenting on this particular issue.
Thanks. Councilor Kopp. Yes, sorry, Shelley.
Oh, I was just going to chime in. I'm fine with doing interviews right now, as long as, you know, it's given the caveat that there may be some changes to the boards. But I think in general, most of our boards won't be changing, is my feel. I know we might change some of the duties and things like that, but so I'm with Paula and Ingrid and just trying to be patient until we get past that January 27th special meeting.
Councilor Wusso?
Let's bounce back to Charlie, who was actually ahead of me. And he can finish up his counselor comment.
Well, I think we're taking Paula's. Paula
Oh.
has a couple other action items.
Okay, great. Then honestly, I already spoke my mind about this. I think we should go ahead and interview. And ultimately, I would even be comfortable with appointing people, knowing that even after the 27th, it may be some delay, but certainly I'm comfortable with interviews.
So there's two questions. One are interviews and one is appointments. I think sounds like we're all pretty comfortable with interviews happening before the 27th. Are we all comfortable with appointments happening before the 27th as well, or do we want to wait after that?
Again, mine are real limited. Mine are the boards I think are going to change. And also that would be the P&Z appointments, which I think we're going to make at the next meeting because we're required to have a P&Z. So I think we need to get those people on board and move forward. The Financial Advisory Board, the Tourism Board, we're not going to change them. I don't think if we change the duties, that's one thing, but I don't think we're going to be even changing the duties much of those two boards. But I think we should get those boards appointed and moving. We have things that have to get done.
Well, I'm good with both. I feel like with it, whatever interview or appointment, we always would include the fact that we are going through some changes right now and just making sure that's perfectly clear with anybody that we talk to. So that's my big one. And Mira, I would ask you to just do a head nod or ask how we're going to move forward on that. And the other issues that I discussed, mask and snow pushing into the street, and the continued water rate assistance. Those are discussions that we could determine at a different time, as long as city staff knows what to do. So, Jonathan, would you mind asking for a head nod or something on the
Yes.
interview?
Let's take a real quick, just not a roll call vote, but a real quick vote. Are we all okay with conducting interviews before the 27th? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Are we all okay with making appointments to boards and commissions prior to the 27th? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I saw 3 hands. I only saw Paula, Ingrid, and Charlie. Okay. All those opposed and wanting to do it after, say nay or raise your hand. Nay. Okay, so the motion carries 3-2 to 2 because I didn't see a vote from Councilor Hershey or Councilor Davis. Did I miss that?
You did not, because I don't like when things are added at the last minute by misstep. And if she continues to do it, I'm going to have to bring it perhaps to a district court.
Okay, let's see. I think Charlie, your hand is up next for council comments.
Thanks, and I'll try to be brief. I know we got a lot on the agenda. One of the issues that came presented to us in a letter this week was Excel line extensions and whether we have jurisdiction and what jurisdiction we have over that. Is the council interested in having me approach the CML policy committee and see if that's something that they want to address in legislation in 2022?
I guess I'd want to check because I know our city attorney had weighed in. I don't know if everybody saw it, but weighed in on the legality and what our rights are or not. So, Carl, can you address whether that is something, if we change, I mean, if we want to take it through a state statute process, can you talk about a little bit about what that is?
Well, sure. I mean, if you wanted to actually change the current law as it relates to public utilities and how they acquire rights of way, I mean, that's a pretty big lift at the legislature. Certainly, I mean, if Charlie wanted to take it to the policy committee to see if they wanted to talk about it, my gut would tell me they don't. Just because it is, I mean, it's a significant part of how public utilities operate in the state. Doesn't necessarily always make us happy as municipalities or happy as private property owners. I know I have a number of clients being impacted in various places as well. But power of condemnation for public utilities is well settled law in Colorado. So the one area where there may be some interface is to talk about 1041 powers. and how those get utilized. But honestly, that would be a better conversation at not only the city level, but at the county level regarding these types of projects.
So Charlie, did that answer your question?
I just thought it is, if you want it, now is the time, because we're going to have another policy committee meeting, I think before the next council meeting. So, or it's right around that same time frame. But I'm not one way or the other. I just thought of that as we were looking at that issue.
Okay. Is there any desire to have Charlie present that to the policy committee at CML? I think
Fine. Carl, we had talked at the last meeting, when I was reviewing the minutes, I think we need this, that we, as we're looking at code changes, we're going to look at changing. So the minutes are the YouTube recording or whatever we call that. And those are the official minutes of the city. I do think we need to get that in place, given the nature of our minutes. Okay. The last thing I have real quickly is, we had, I was at the Park and Rec Commission, and maybe Jigger was going to address this as well last night, but they were a little frustrated by the amount of time that we gave them at our last meeting regarding the mountain biking group, I think. And I think we got to be careful when we bring boards and commissions and ask them to come and see us and or other presentations. And I'm guilty of this as everybody else, but not setting too many things. So we give them enough time. We're not trying to rush people through presentations or things like that. I know we have a lot of things to do. And in that regard, I know we had a meeting, work session this morning, and Mr. Hershey and I had a conversation over during the day today. It's very difficult for him right now, and he can speak for himself, for him to make daytime, that is morning in particular. I assume that early afternoon would work, but make early daytime work sessions. I think it's important that work sessions they're very valuable information items, that if we can set it up so that all 7 of us can be there. And if we can't do it in the morning of that first meeting of the month, because Mr. Hershey can never be there, I think that we should look at a third night in the month that we have a work session. And I would say go 4 to 8 in a work session. I know we had this discussion before, but Mr. Hershey said he can't be there because of work commitments. I think we have to try to figure out what we can do to keep him involved in those sessions.
So Charlie, let me just jump in real quick and just address the first thing you said about the mountain bike thing before we went into the other thing. I don't believe we had an actual presentation on the agenda from our Parks and Rec Commission. It was made as a citizen's comment. And so I think that was kind of the confusion. I think if we had asked them as our advisory board to present information or recommendations to us, we would have allotted them more time or a different format. But that comment made from James Fosnot was made within the citizen comment period. And while he made it on behalf of the Parks and Rec board, you see what I'm saying? It was just kind of confusing because we didn't ask for a presentation or a recommendation.
Well, maybe we'll clarify this in our meeting on the 27th, but I know they were very frustrated by that. I was at the meeting when they said they were going to make the recommendation. And if we have boards, commissions, and they're making recommendations within their general duties, that this is their area, I think we need to make sure we give them enough time to present those recommendations. And I don't think we want to be having the boards and commissions think we're not listening to them, which is what they hear when they get cut off. So I'm just giving you feedback, and Ingrid could follow on her comments, but that we do need to talk also about ongoing work sessions. And if we don't want to do it tonight, that's fine. We're not going to have a morning session at our second meeting next week. We can put an agenda item at our next meeting.
Okay. Does Shelley or Ingrid both have their hands up? Want to comment on that?
I do.
Great. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Ingrid.
All I was going to say is that my takeaway from a few of the boards and commissions that I'm the liaison on is that maybe in addition on the 27th to discussing, the roles, responsibilities, et cetera, maybe we could also add an agenda item to that where we discuss how to better and more fine-tune communication between council and our boards and liaisons, meaning that if one of them, if a chairperson or even a representative from a board or commission wants to come in front of us, that maybe we have some different protocol for them versus just the 3 minutes for the general public. I don't want ever to have feedback again that we don't listen to our boards and commissions. Now, we may choose not to always go the direction that they recommend because there are the other variables, but nonetheless, I still want them to have the opportunity to feel heard.
Thanks, Ingrid. Shelley.
My comments related to that are a little bit different. And I was going to bring up something about how we left that item on the December 2nd meeting on the trails, because we just had 2 motions, I believe, that died. So we gave absolutely no direction to staff. And I was going to bring that up of possibly looking at giving some direction on that. So you want me to bring that up now?
Sure.
Okay, my proposal would be, because the motions died, there was some disagreement on how to do things, and we didn't really have a strong recommendation from Parks and Rec and Commission, and I don't feel like they have reviewed, our trails plan overall and how this mountain bike proposal would even fit into that. So I was just going to propose that we ask Parks and Rec Commission and staff to go back and look at an approach for planning our trail system, updating that plan, and also funding that, and have some kind of public process and bring that recommendation back to council. That's it. And that can be a motion if you want, or.
I think I heard that as our second.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that's a motion, I will second it.
Okay. Shelley, you just for the because you kind of said it and then we made it a motion, but can you restate that so Ryan gets that accurately?
Okay, I'm just proposing that council give direction to the Parks and Recreation Commission and staff that they study the subject of planning for trails around town, be it hiking trails, biking trails, whatever, and some kind of public process for getting input on that, and then some kind of mechanism for funding, and bring that back to council. And whether that takes, 3 months, 4 months, whatever it takes.
Okay, it's been moved by Shelley, seconded by Councilor Wusso. Ryan, let's call the question.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Yes.
Councilor Kaut,
Yes,
Mayor Godis,
Yes.
Councilor Hershey,
No,
Councilor Russo,
Yes,
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Stepp.
Yes.
It passes 6-1.
All right. Thank you for that, Shelley. Back to, I think, Councilor Willman's comment of asking for a formal vote. I don't think you're asking for a formal vote. I think we need to take a formal vote on morning work sessions. Does anybody else have a comment about morning work sessions versus Councilor Willman's suggestion on evening work sessions? Go ahead, Councilor Davis.
Well, I just thought that this morning, it doesn't have to be a work session, but the opportunity to review the agenda was actually seemed like the best time we've had, most productive time we've had doing that in the last couple of years. I left there feeling really informed and well advised on what was on the agenda and how we should be kind of working into it tonight. So I think those morning sessions are really important. It's been a huge disappointment to me when we got away from them.
Thank you. Councilor Stepp?
I'm just, for me, the best thing is consistency. Whether we do this in the morning or do this in the evening, just for my planning purposes on making sure that I'm available, that would be big for me. So I think that moving forward in the evening once a week is good. I know when we brought that up last time, it was a problem because it committed staff to extra time at night. But really, that's my goal. If we move in one direction or the other, I'm good with it, just as long as we can set up a regular schedule.
Yeah, and so the way it was left, I believe, at our last work session is that it was going to be the first meeting of the month that we would have these extra work sessions. I guess I'm still supportive of that. It doesn't work for me to add another night for me personally, and because I have other commitments in the evening, especially with family and other volunteer activities. So it just, and that's fine. And other people could run the meeting. Councilor Willman could run the meeting in my absence, but I can't commit to another night myself. Other comments? Go ahead, Councilor Wusso.
Sorry, our dinner came late. My only, honestly, I signed on to this role, so I will make whatever the voice of council work for my schedule. But honestly, for me, those sessions at times that add yet another evening commitment to our staff, that doesn't resonate with me. Our staff work hard enough, and to have yet another night away from their family and friends, or just their downtime from work, I don't want to do another evening. So I'm happy to do it from 8:30 in the morning up to whatever time frame. If we need to come one evening or one afternoon a month from 3:30 to 5:30, I'm comfortable doing something along those lines, but not another commitment for another evening.
Okay, Councilor Kopp. You're very difficult to see your hand because your yellow hand blends into that yellow wall behind you. So, but go ahead.
Right. I agree with what Ingrid just said as far as adding another evening. I think that just puts a burden on staff and everyone else as far as having to be there, and adding another week of council meetings to our month also adds another disruption to our schedule. So, but I would like to see us try to accommodate Councilor Hershey if he's not able to make those meetings, if there's some way that he can maybe meet with the mayor ahead of time or send in comments on the agenda and questions. I don't know if there's any way he can zoom in on that morning meeting. I realize it's work time, but trying to figure out a way to accommodate that would be helpful.
Yeah, and for my part, I'd be more than happy to meet with you, Councilor Hershey, and kind of go over things or talk with you on the phone. Go ahead, Councilor Hershey.
You're all being so nice. I didn't ask Charlie to bring this up. Again, I think we need to move on. And Steve said that the meeting went very well this morning, and it was the most productive meeting he had in 2 years, which makes me think maybe it was good I wasn't there. So, I have a job that is certainly my primary focus. It also is a public service job. This is secondary. If the people of Glenwood Springs don't understand that, then I will explain it to them. I would be happy to meet with you or Mr. Willman beforehand, though. Mr. Godis, I think that works. Thanks.
Thanks, Tony. Okay, let's take a vote. Ryan, let's. I guess I'll make a motion too. It's official in the record. I would motion that we continue to have morning work sessions on the first meeting of the month that are scheduled from 8:30 to 10:30 a.m. period.
And Mr. Mayor, I'm going to vote no, because my bigger concern is not me. It's that people work and have real jobs and can't be there. So thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that. Did I see a hand for a second, Shelley? Second. Okay. Let the record reflect Shelley Kopp is seconding my motion. Ryan, let's call the question.
Yes, sir. Councilor Wusso,
Yes.
Councilor Stepp,
Yes.
Councilor Hershey,
No.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Yes.
Mayor Godis,
Yes.
Councilor Kaup.
Yes.
It passes 6-1.
Okay. Other council comments? Okay, seeing none, This time I will do my comments briefly. Okay, so mine are going to take just a little bit, but I really want to thank the city, particularly the Parks and Rec Department and the Streets Department for hauling off. We got hit with, it seems like half a foot of snow every night for like 8 nights in a row. It was really Herculean. I know we get a lot of complaints about snow removal, but these guys work 12, guys and girls work 12 to 15-hour shifts. They were away from their families at Christmas, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, the time that we absolutely take for granted being with our families. They did not have that luxury. And we just really, as a community, applaud you. I want to specifically say we had nearly 4 feet of snow that was removed between December 23rd and January 3rd. The city, with assist from Gould Construction, hauled off 982 loads. So not everybody thinks, we don't always just pile it in windrows and blow it off. We actually remove it and take it to different snow lots around town. Dave Rippey also helped after the New Year's with some of his equipment. Labor hours, this is just streets, are at 820 hours of plowing and snow removal. We used 400 tons of de-icer during that period. I want to specifically thank Jake Velasquez, Jake Swindo, Travis Payne, Sean Shanahan, Kevin Binns, Brett Blodgett, John Farnham, Rich Ryan, Braxton Jackson, Sammy Madriz, and Matt Hench. Let's see. I also want to thank the Parks folks who spent 702 hours for the past 2 weeks removing snow, 420 hours for the Facilities and Community Center, 68 hours for the airport, for all of our facilities. All of those folks, and I want to thank the folks who helped out at the airport as well. Greg and Dally Rippey, Sean Thomas, Jake Swindle, Sean Welder, and John Farnham. So thank you very much to all of our city staff, the volunteers. It is a thankless job, and you know what? I really hope we gave them a heck of a lot of calm time to spend some time with their families because they were doing it at such a tough time. We all want to be with their families. Thank you, guys. Okay, and then my other last thing is I wanted to congratulate our very own Assistant City Manager, Jen Newton, for being the president-elect for 2022 for the Colorado Cities and County Management Association, that's CCCMA, in case you were wondering. And we just, we're very proud of her. This is a really great honor. Jen's fantastic, and we really appreciate her taking all these steps to help the larger community, to further her professional development, and to help an organization that is really here to help us as small cities. So thank you very much, Jen. We have all these really cool pictures that Councilor Willman printed off. My filter's getting it in the way. Way to go, Jen. Thank you so much. And Jen, now's the time, if you want to say an acceptance speech, it's appropriate.
Just thank you.
All right. I don't have any other comments. Does anybody else have any comments? Nope. Okay, seeing none.
Hold on one second.
Yeah.
Our city has received so many grants this week. We've gotten notification, and I think that maybe Deborah could very, very quickly. Sorry, Deborah, but if it's been awesome.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. I'm only aware this week of the TDM one that we got, which
I've gotten a couple emails that we've received. Okay. So thank you all so much for your hard work on that and just procuring those funds so that our taxpayer dollars go further and we're able to do a lot of these projects. So thank you so much yet again, and always thank you for such a hardworking staff. We appreciate you guys.
I think Terry's gonna explain the TDM grant just a little bit when she's talking later on. So.
Yeah, it's funny. Thank you very much, Inger, for bringing that up, because we get so spoiled if it's not for millions of dollars, which we're fairly used to getting. Actually, it just doesn't register when we get only 80,000 or 40,000. Like, it just goes right over our head. So thank you very much for bringing that up. That's really important. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I will now read a proclamation on behalf of the Lions Club. The Lions Club is 100 years old, and normally I would be probably presenting this at the front of the stage with Dave Merritt right here, but We're just going to have to do it virtually. This is a proclamation in honor of the Lions Club 100th anniversary. Whereas the Glenwood Springs Lions Club was founded on January 8, 1922, as one of the first Lions Club chartered in Western Colorado. And whereas the Glenwood Springs Lion Club is responsible for many community service projects, such as constructing the basketball stands at Sayre Parks, baseball stand, at Sayre Park. And whereas the Glenwood Springs Lions Club has provided hundreds of scholarships for local students. And whereas the Glenwood Springs Lions Club has multiple programs dedicated towards optical needs, from their kids' sight eye screening for preschool and early school age children, to collect and use eyeglasses for recycling, to the Lions Optical Assistance Program. And whereas the Glenwood Springs Lions Club has an annual health fair. And whereas in the last 100 years, the Glenwood Springs Lions Club has done numerous charitable deeds and given back to the community in more ways than the modern memory is able to recall. I love that. Therefore, be it resolved, I, Jonathan Godis, Mayor of Glenwood Springs of the state of Colorado, ask all of our city residents to join me in honoring the Glenwood Springs Lion Club as they celebrate their 100th year anniversary. And I am going to, sorry, I'm trying to get Dave Merritt to be able to talk. I keep hitting his button. Go ahead, Dave.
Am I unmuted now? Yes.
You are, yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate that. We were going to have, as you know, our a luncheon this Saturday, but with the upsurge and everything else, and being as how I am on the younger age of the demographic group of many of the Lions, we decided to postpone that until things are better. So, but thank you very much for the proclamation. And I also urge you all to be on your best behavior today, as Boy Scout Troop 225 is tuning in as part of their communications merit badge. Learn what goes on city council meetings.
Very cool. We will be, Dave.
Yes.
Cross our heart.
Thank you.
And so I'll also take a second to thank all of our service clubs. This is not to diminish Lions. They've been fantastic, but Rotary and Kiwanis and all of our service clubs form such an integral part of our community. But man, 100 years is something really fantastic. And here's hoping we get another 100 years. All right. Where are we at? I'm heading to my agenda.
I would make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Very
You're
good.
welcome.
I will second that. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed? None saw or noted. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, on to our regular agenda. This is planning file 6020. This is consideration of a major site architectural review plan application for the construction of 300 unit multifamily developments in 14 separate buildings in Glenwood. Metals. Counselor, Attorney Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is obviously, we heard this at the end of November. It died per our code on a 3-3 tie and was denied. That prompted a brief lawsuit to which we entered into a stipulation on behalf of the city to resolve that by bringing this back in front of the full council for further action, and also agreeing to fix our code so that quasi-judicial matters would not be immediately terminated on a tie vote on a motion to approve, which does create some procedural due process issues. So where this left off, really where we're picking up is as if that motion just had failed, and we're starting forward with continued motions by council. The one thing I do want to, on the record for Steve, I see his hands up as well, is just confirm on the record that Steve Davis did in fact watch that entire proceeding, is completely familiar with the application, has read all the materials and all of the comments related to it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to council for further action. Thank you.
So Councilor Davis, could you please affirm Attorney Hanlon's stipulations?
Part of my statement. Are you calling for my statement?
Right now, I'm just asking that you have affirmed that you've read and seen all of the comments and watched the review so that you can feel comfortable voting on it.
Yeah, that kind of screws up my whole, message.
Oh, do the messages. Do your thing.
It throws my rhythm off.
No. Sorry, man. That's my fault.
No, I wanted to say I was out of town on the second meeting in November, and I apologize. It resulted in causing a lot of people a lot of grief and extra work. I watched intently the entire council meeting of November 18th, 2022 from the live feed on YouTube. I reviewed the application and staff report related to planning file 6020, consideration of the major site and architectural plan review application for the construction of a 300-unit multifamily development in the Glenwood Meadows. This project contributes to and addresses our number one priority, housing. Another priority, childcare. It addresses and exceeds attainable housing requirements. The project is consistent with the land use and development plan approved decades ago. The project meets or exceeds the city's comprehensive plan and development code. The project is planned to provide pickleball, parkland, garages, storage, and a diversified size of units. The project was approved by a unanimous decision of P&Z and produced no public comment. I will therefore be supporting the approval of this development and so move to approve in planning file 6020, the major site architectural plan review based on findings 1 through 4 on page 2 of the January 6, 2022 staff report, and conditions 1 through 8 on pages 2 and 3 of the January 6, 2020 staff report.
Second.
Been motioned by Councilor Davis, seconded by Councilor Hershey. Ryan, let's call the question.
Counselor Stepp,
No.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
No.
Mayor Godis,
No.
Counselor Hershey,
I'm sorry, I was muted, Ryan. Yes,
that's all right.
I couldn't hit the button. I'm sorry, Ryan.
Counselor Cow,
Yes.
Counselor Russo,
Yes.
it passes 4-3.
All right. Thank you. Going on to ordinance number, item number 18. This is amending the municipal code 020 council voting codes revision.
Can
Carl?
I ask a quick question of the city attorney, Mr. Mayor?
Sure, please.
Can you hear me, Mr. Hamlin?
Yes.
So what, you talked about this before we voted on 6020, but what this would do essentially, so the public understands, is if there was a similar situation where is it addressing a tie vote where there's an affirmative motion or a tie vote when there's a negative motion? Could you just explain that?
Sure, that's
Thank you.
absolutely what I was about to do. So what you have in front of you, kind of the second part of resolving matters with the developer in this was to address this code provision. What you have in front of you is a revision to voting by council that addresses during quasi-judicial matters what happens when a tie vote occurs, whether in the affirmative or negative on an application, whether it's for or against an application, just that no decision of council can be made on a tie vote on a quasi-judicial matter. And so it goes through kind of a cascade effect of if council determines that evening, because there's only 6 of you, whether because of an absence or because you're short a council member because you have a vacancy, that it would you would then make the decision to roll it over to the next regular meeting to try again. If the council is fully seated at that next regular meeting, then obviously we would have a 4-3, a little bit similar to what we did tonight. If at that next cascade effect is if at that next meeting, there's still only 6 of you, you still can't break the loggerhead, it then defaults that the decision of the planning commission on that matter becomes the final decision with their findings on that land use matter. And the reason that works underneath our code is that the planning commission makes a recommendation on everything that comes in front of you that is a quasi judicial matter coming out of planning. And so we can rely on, they would have made some kind of an affirmative recommendation either for or against it, and that would become the binding final decision of the city on that matter. And the reason that final decision is important is just what we went through with the 106 Act, the Colorado Rules of Civil Procedure 106. The next layer of review of that decision is in district court. And so an applicant has to have some type of final decision so that they can move on to that next level if they want to. Mr. Willman had sent out an email with some proposed revised language. I will be honest, I don't know that it adds, I understand what he was trying to do. I don't know that it exactly accomplishes it. My suggestion is, if you're inclined to, is to adopt the ordinance as it stands. I understand what Charlie was trying to address, and I may tweak the language a little bit before it comes back to you on second reading to address that issue for clarity's sake. So with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Other questions?
Thank you, Carl Hanlon.
Councilor Kopp.
This isn't really a question, just Carl, just to affirm that will we also address the just kind of.
The mistake that I had in the whereas clause is I was doing packet items on New Year's Eve.
Okay.
We won't discuss why.
Any other questions or comments? Okay.
This is a public hearing, Jonathan.
Right. So we'll now open this up to public comment. Seeing no hands, we will now close it to public comment. We'll bring it back for a motion. Go ahead, Councilor Willman.
Yeah, I move to approve ordinance 2022-01, amending the municipal code section 020 concerning council voting to clarify tie matters.
I'll second the motion.
If I could have just one brief comment, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, of course.
I think Carl's some language. I'm troubled, and if we're going to fix this thing, we need to fix it correct. And I trust Carl's judgment, on this. I just worry about the word no affirmative action, what that means. And if we're really trying to solve the problem, and we're really talking about quasi judicial matters, if there's tie votes and other things, I think the action, whether the motion just fails. And we're going to be talking later about procedural things in the code of conduct and the procedural motions. And that's the way that I kind of developed that vote there. So that was my only comment. I trust that Carl can look at this and we can look at that in second reading, but I support making this change.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, I'm sorry, Ryan, let's call the question.
Councilor Hershey,
Yes.
Councilor Cow,
Yes.
Councilor Russo,
Yes.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Councilor Stepp,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Yes.
Mayor Godis,
Yes.
clean sweep.
All right. Thank you very much. Item number 19, annexation petition. I think we're back to Carl. It's a Carl show tonight.
A little bit. A couple of things. One, I wanted to say a huge thank you to Ryan and his team on reviewing the petitions that got this in front of you tonight. And actually, I wanted to say a huge thank you too to actually the proponents of this, because they did a really good job. Sherry Kaloya representing them did a fantastic job, and it was very tight, very well done. And I just, like I said, it's very much appreciated because makes all of our lives a lot easier. So what you have in front of you is pursuant to section 5.4 of the Glenwood Springs Charter. When you have a referendum, a sufficient petition, it comes back in front of you. Ryan has certified that petition. And so you have only two choices tonight. You can repeal the ordinance in question. And if you choose not to repeal the ordinance, then you are required to set it for an election within 150 days. And that needs to be, if you have an election already scheduled, it needs to go on that election. So we do have one scheduled for the first Tuesday in May, which would be when this would go to an election. We would have 2 ballot questions at that point. So really, the main vote is on that first one, whether to repeal or not. And then the vote on the resolution is really ministerial. You guys need to pass that. It just sets the ballot language and acknowledges the date for that election, although that's really done by operation of law under the charter. That, happy to answer any questions or have Ryan answer any questions regarding the petition process.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
So, Mr. Hanlon, you say, and again, I'm asking rhetorical questions as sometimes you and Charlie are off to, and other lawyers are off to do, but when you say it's ministerial, so let's say the annexation is not repealed, you're saying it has to go on the ballot no matter what. When you say ministerial, if the majority of this council said, no, we don't want to put it on the ballot, and we reject this petition, it would still go on the ballot.
It absolutely would. I'm using the resolution. It's nice and it makes it clean because when we set the ballot language, we set the date of the election. It's if you guys decide to vote against that, I'll just do that anyway. So
well, that'll be a fun vote. Thank you, Carl.
So
All right. Further questions? Further comments? Does anybody have a motion? Go ahead, Councilor Stepp.
Does this require public comment?
It's a great question.
Sorry. It does not require public comment under the charter. It's not treated as a public hearing. It just says it comes back to council for a decision, either to repeal or to place it on the ballot. I leave that to the council's discretion on if they want to take any comment. It doesn't, I mean, it's a very narrow thing you have to do. It's either A or B, right? But that's up to council.
Okay, I just didn't know what the rules were. Thank you, Carl.
Councilor Hershey?
Trying to lower my hand. Did you want comment on this, Mr. Mayor, or did you want comment on public comment?
I'll take comment on this or a motion at this point.
Well, then at this time, I would make a motion to repeal ordinance 2021 of 08. Is that okay, Carl, that motion? Thank you.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Tony and seconded by Paula to repeal ordinance 2021-08. Ryan, let's call the question.
Mayor Godus,
No.
Councilor Davis,
No.
Councilor Hershey,
Yes.
Councilor Kaut,
No.
Councilor Wusso,
Yes.
Councilor Stepp,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman.
No.
Motion fails 4-3.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve then resolution 2022-02, setting a referendum for the May 3rd election date?
Also
I-
move.
I would second that, Shelley, if it's okay with you. Thank you.
Moved by Shelley, seconded by Tony. Ryan, let's call the question.
Councilor Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Godus,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman,
No.
Councilor Stepp,
Yes.
Councilor Kaut,
Yes.
Councilor Wusso,
Yes.
Councilor Hershey,
I love voting on things that don't matter. Yes.
6-1. It passes.
Thank you. And thank you for all the attendees who showed up tonight to observe this conversation.
Thank you.
Ordinance number, item number 20, ordinance number 2022-2, campaign finance. Again, City Attorney Carl Hanlon.
I'm really going to stop. I'm doing some, this is like by far the most exciting things you guys will talk about tonight, right? It's campaign finance. No, so I briefly described just sort of the lay of the land earlier today, and also in an email to Paula that I should have shared with everybody. A few years ago, the Secretary of State's office stepped away from helping to enforce the Fair Campaigns Finance Act on local elections. And for most small jurisdictions, that really didn't change very much. Candidates registered and they filed reports, and it just, we don't have a lot of that activity going on. What Glenwood did see in the fall was we did have a lot of interest in a ballot issue. We had a fair amount of money spent on it, door hangers and things like that. And we got the question of, well, how come nobody's reporting, and what are, how do you enforce against them? And we had to say, look, we really, we've never adopted an election campaign finance portion of the code because it had never really been necessary before. So what you have before you is the adoption by reference of most of all of the state rules and regulations regarding filing, small issue committees, large issue committees, all of those kinds of things, candidate committees. Really, all of this is driven by state statute, and then given the clerk some ability to enforce and require those reports, and ability to, to make sure that people are being transparent, which I think is incredibly important in elections. Probably one of the most important questions, or the one that I'm personally most interested in from you guys for input on, is in the ordinance we have set, I just picked a number, frankly, which was $400 for the donation limit, individual donations to any campaign or committee. That number for me was just based on the 2020 election cycle. That's what I think State House and State Senate races, that was the limit. I believe the legislature raised that to 625 for this, the 2022 election cycle. I will tell you that municipalities that have adopted election codes, it ranges from probably the lowest I've seen is Avon, which is $100, up to a couple $1,000s. Silverthorne last night just adopted a very similar code to this and decided to set that limit at 500 because that seemed to be kind of what felt right for their community. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know Ryan can answer any too about kind of why this is important to him procedurally. And with that, I'm good.
Hi, Paula.
Carl, my one question, and you actually referenced the fact that I ran for county commissioner, and we had reporting and that type of stuff in your response to me, but there was no limit on the county commissioner donation. So we do have to have a limit along with
you
this?
You don't have to have a limit. I just know that a lot of communities, as local elections have gotten more intense, have decided that they feel like a limit is important. You can take that out entirely, recognizing that, I think communities' concerns are that an outside group will come in and spend $10 or $20 or $30,000 on a candidate. And really maybe that doesn't feel like in tune with what the community expectations would be, but that's entirely up to you guys.
Okay, I just wanted clarity on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was an option as well. Okay,
yeah,
thank
absolutely.
You. And comment wise,
can we ask
comments or still questions?
I'd love to just clear the questions first before we do comments.
Great.
Shelley, did you have a comment or a question? Excuse me.
Just a question, would that limit that we set, does that apply to the candidate themselves also?
No, it does not. Individual, if you're spending your own money, that does not, you're not limited.
Is there a limit on that anywhere in the state statute or?
No, you can spend, you're essentially loaning the money to your committee, is how it typically gets reported, is your expenditures are on behalf of the committee or a loan to the committee, if I remember correctly.
And
thanks.
Carl, one of my questions is, can we have a different amount for council races versus small issue, large issue, so we don't have to be
absolutely. We kept it thin and simple, but absolutely, if you're inclined to go that direction, we can make those changes on second reading to have a differentiation between what contribution limits were for city council races versus issue committees.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Paula, you had a comment.
I'm good with moving forward with this. I think it's a good idea. I didn't realize that reporting wasn't necessary. For some reason in the back of my mind, I thought we had to report when we ran for city council, but I may have been mixing stuff
No,
up.
you do. We just didn't have anything to enforce against you if you didn't.
I see. Okay, thank you
Right.
for that clarification.
Yeah.
Okay. And I am good with, now that Jonathan's brought up dividing it up for a council race versus other issues. I still think we're a small town community, and one rate for both of those, I think, is feasible, especially in the sense that, you know, if you're talking about issue, there could be big money poured into an issue really from out of towners as well. So I just, for me, it's like having a good solid rate for both of these and making it easy is the best approach. And I am fine with the $400 rate, but I'd like to hear other comments.
Yeah, and I'll throw my comment out there. I think the lower the better. I think that, you know, if it's $400, a couple can contribute each, and that's $800. And I just think anything, and I'm fine with wherever we go, but I think the lower, just again, lower the better, because if, as a candidate, I'll just speak on my experience 5 years ago. You know, I ran a race, and I felt comfortable asking my friends and neighbors and people who would support me for $100. Maybe I don't hang out with the most well-heeled people, but I think that, you know, that's something that anybody can do, and it demonstrates grassroots and actually enthusiasm for the candidate. If we get to, you know, again, I view 400 as really an 800 per couple contribution. Then all it takes is, especially in the ward races, maybe this is different at large. I'm just speaking on behalf of myself, but I think that, you know, it allows a candidate to who is more established, who has deeper pockets, friends with deeper pockets, who are more well connected, but having somebody who's maybe younger, more ethnically diverse, being able to pass the hat and get $100 from their friends or a group of people is, I think, more democratic, and they will have a much higher bar than a candidate who's been around forever and has all the contacts and is able to pass a hat and have like $1,000 pretty easy. So those are just my comments based on my race and my experience 5 years ago, but I'm happy to hear everybody else's. Councilwoman.
Thanks. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Jonathan. I generally agree, but one of the things that I learned at least a couple of years ago when I ran and in some of the issue campaigns I've worked on is that the advertising rates at the newspaper have gone up considerably over the last 4 or 5 years. And I guess I'm not one way or the other. I was going to propose 500 because I was thinking $1,000 per couple. So, but that's not significantly different than yours. But that was my only concern is just because of the cost. If you are running a contested campaign, it's expensive. So,
Thanks, Charlie. Councilor Hershey.
I just wanted to echo what Paula said, and I agree with her 100%. Paula, we're likely to have an election this May with a lot of outside money. I don't know, or any, and that always concerns me. So I think I sort of agree with the direction council's going. Whether it's $400 or $500, I'm open to either one. Thanks.
Councilor Wusso.
I was just going to say that I am very comfortable moving forward on this. And I feel like it's rather a superfluous number. Like we can put 400 out there per recommendation of legal counsel. If at any point in the future we need to adjust that where it doesn't seem appropriate, then we can very easily make that change. But for the time being, it does put some parameters. It makes sure that, and I really appreciated that background that, you know, there that for instance, that outside money could influence our local elections. And I think that for the best interest of the community, we put these parameters on there and we move forward with them. And like I said, if at any point we need to adjust, we do. And I think I'm comfortable making a motion to approve it at this point, but I want to make sure everyone's had a chance to talk.
Councilor Cobb.
I'll second.
Oh,
It is a public hearing.
I don't think there was a motion, so there was an emotion.
But there's public comment too, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I jumped ahead when we started doing comments. So go ahead. I guess make your comment. Then we'll turn it back over for public comment and then bring it back for motion. Sorry.
Can I comment?
Yes.
Okay, and I think Charlie and Ingrid basically said everything I was going to say. I was going to propose a slightly lower limit since you brought up the couple aspect, because what I saw in a campaign was that usually the contribution comes from the household, more or less. But I'm comfortable with the cost of advertising and everything. It can be expensive, so $400 to $500 per person, I think, is a good range.
All right, because this is a public comment, Counselor Davis.
Well, I just wanted to say I would probably support $500. And I think that if you have an outside organization coming in to promote a particular item on a ballot, this isn't going to come into play anyway. Because they're not going to take contributions to make their spiel.
Right. Okay, I'll turn it over to the public for public comment. All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back. I guess, my suggestion, I've heard 400 or 500. I feel more comfortable lower than 400 myself, but I would vote for 400 if somebody wants to make that motion. I probably wouldn't support anything higher than that. But Counselor Stepp.
Sorry, I had to unmute. I'll make a motion to pass ordinance 2022-202 with a $400 limit for contribution per person for campaign or issue.
I'll second that.
The motion by Counselor Stepp, seconded by Counselor Kopp. Ryan, let's call the question.
Counselor Hershey,
Yes, I was ready this time. Thanks.
Counselor Kaup,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Yes.
Counselor Wusa,
Yes.
Counselor Stepp,
Yes.
Mayor Godis,
Yes.
and Counselor Davis.
No.
It's a trend, 6-1.
Okay.
Before I sign off, Mr. Mayor, I will note that I did 4 agenda items in under 20 minutes. Just saying.
Technically,
I just want to note that I'm glad you guys all think my husband does exactly what I tell him to do when he goes to vote.
I think Carl should handle the rest of the agenda tonight.
That's fine. Turning it over. Can we give Carl administrative privileges, Alyssa? That'd be fantastic. Okay, but on to the next non-controversial, easy layup. Paid parking decision to move forward with pricing. Item number 21. Who is doing this?
If you could please bring over Terry.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Carl, I'd be glad to let you take a run at this if you'd like. So this is our continuing discussion about paid parking. We have been at this for quite a while. We started some of our initial discussions back in April. We had some public meetings in September. Since then, we have met with the DDA on November 16th. We discussed paid parking in general, and whether they would be able to make a recommendation to move forward with it. And some of the DDA's comments were that they really felt like they needed more program details before they could, evaluate any sort of paid parking program. They also said that they really felt like we should work to enforce our own regulations before we put in place a paid parking program. So that was some of the input that we got from the DDA board. On the 18th, and I apologize, I got the date wrong in my memo, but it was the 18th that we met with the city council, and we talked a little bit about our input from the DDA. We talked about some of our input from the public meetings that we'd had. We also discussed the importance of paid parking in relationship to transportation demand management. And as you guys probably recall, paid parking is one of the major, I guess, sticks in terms of carrots and sticks when you're trying to encourage and discourage people from using their personal vehicles. Try to encourage them to do something else: public transit, walking, biking. So that was one of the major impetus in trying to move this paid parking program forward. So when we met with the council, we didn't get clear direction. We had a lot of opinions about how we should move forward. So we wanted to bring this back to you guys in an evening meeting so that we could have a clear vote on whether to move forward at all. So one of the things that we did get out of the work session was that we wanted to explore the option of just enforcing what we have. Also, I think the council advocated for a small start. What could we do from a small program start? So I tried to come up with some ideas in terms of what could we do to enforce what we have, and also, what would be a small program start. So the first option I came up with was enforce the regulations we have. As you probably know, we have a current parking enforcement officer that works Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Our revenues from that program are about $50,000 a year. Our expenses from that program are about $60,000 a year. So we don't really break even on that program. And the general feeling is that we don't really have a functioning enforcement. It's difficult for that officer to make rounds fast enough without modern technology and using chalking tires. So to really enforce the regulations that we have, I guess I would propose adding another parking management officer for the downtown area, adding the license plate recognition technology for the vehicles, and the software for 2 officers, and then adding ticket management to allow easier collection, and the ability to increase fines for repeat offenses. So that would be a first program, an option 1. I don't think it would be budget neutral. We would be spending money, and I think that overall the cost would be greater than what we would take in. A second idea for a program would be option 2, where we did implement a small paid parking program. We would incorporate all of the ideas from option 1, and then we would add paid parking from 7th to 9th as well. Excuse me, as well as paid parking in the city's parking structure and off-street lots. Again, the idea would be to generate, some revenue, also to encourage our employees to park in other areas. In this case, we would be trying to move them to the wastewater treatment plant lot with free parking at that in that area. And then we would also add management of the free employee permits at the wastewater treatment plant lot. So additional things, the DDA did indicate in their meeting that they were interested in enforcing the regulations that we have, and they may want to make some contribution towards that program. And again, costs were not discussed at all, and so there's no dollar value associated with that. And again, we would be asking. And then the second thing, the Transportation Commission did meet on Tuesday this week, and they wanted to support Program 2 as a paid parking option. They also had some ideas that they wanted us to consider adding. And those ideas were to make sure that we were planning to retain the current residential parking permit, anticipating that we would have employees trying to park in the residential areas. Also to add graduated parking fees, as you go through perhaps a 4-hour, this is just a proposal, a 4-hour time period, maybe the first half an hour or hour is free, and then you go to $1 for the second hour, and maybe $2 for the third hour, something like that. That would be a graduated parking fee, and then with a limit of maybe 3 hours or 4 hours where the parking space needs to turn over. They also advocated for incentives for compliance, increasing the fines for repeat violations. They also wanted to encourage transit passes. They asked us to consider providing RAFTA transit passes or free or discounted parking for carpools and other incentives. And I think that, when we discussed that, they thought that the employers should perhaps provide those RAFTA transit passes. And again, we would have a lot of details to work out. But those are some of the ideas for, an option one, which would be to enforce the program that we have by adding additional resources. And then option two, to really begin a small paid parking program. And with that, if the council has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions? Charlie, then Paula.
A couple of questions, Terry. You said one is not revenue neutral. I think I understand generally why that would be true given the current revenue and that, but that's without changing any fines, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we could increase the fines, and I do believe we would have additional revenues, but I think that our expenses would exceed those revenues.
We don't really have any numbers on what program one versus program two would look like. And I know they're all going to be projections, but we don't even have any really projections on the differences in those two. Am I correct?
Yeah, and that is really why I wanted to come back to the council, because I feel like the next step for this program, should the council want to continue it, would be to go to some of these parking management companies and ask them to give us, estimates on some of these ideas so that we could begin to flesh these out in terms of costs.
What would that cost with one of those companies to flesh out those costs?
I would view it sort of like an RFP or RFQ process where we asked for, for an estimate. I think we did go through that process with the police department. At one point in time, they asked for an estimate on a program. And I think, I wasn't a part of that process, but I do believe they were talking about, adding kiosks, adding vehicles, adding people. And I think we could go through a similar process to try to price some of these ideas.
I remember some numbers that were floated, and I've talked to people the past few days about that. I'm not sure if I have the numbers. The last question I have, though, for this is, we talked about the wastewater lift station lot. I remember when you talked about this last time, you thought we could expand that by, if I remember, 30 to 40 spaces at a fairly low cost. Is that right?
Yeah, we have talked about it in the past, and I do think that, it could be, a parking lot that was paved with millings and striped. It would be, I think, low cost. Deborah's got something to say.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think we're planning on doing that in the springtime anyway.
Okay, thanks.
The huge mountain of snow melts that is now there.
Paula, excuse my eating.
No, that's good. A couple of questions, and one of them relates back to what Charlie just referred to, was expanding the water treatment plant parking lot. And can we do something similar with that parking lot next to City Hall? Because when I park there, I'm never sure if you can park anywhere but along the edges on it. There's no striping or anything like that, or any indication. Is there an easy way to do that?
We have been through several iterations of striping on the I call it the triangle lot, because it is an awkward shape. It's very difficult to to create a plan that allows people to back out, without crowding or potentially hitting people. So I think, in the spring we can restripe it, and I do believe that we're probably at an optimum configuration with what we have now, which is essentially parking along all of the edges. Our public parking is on the east and the south sides, and then the city employee parking is along the fence. And I think as it's configured today, it is safe, and I think the spaces are optimized to the degree that we can.
Great. If we could do that in the spring, that'd be great. And then Charlie mentioned the cost, asking you about the cost, and you said an RFP for the parking management company to provide some information. How long does that typically take for them to get that information to you?
I would probably give them at least 6 weeks to come back with something. And I think that we would want to, take at least a couple of weeks to write it well so that we got, good costs on it. So maybe an 8-week period.
And doing that again is another cost added to all these costs that we're talking about that we don't actually have numbers on. I know that we talked about numbers back in November. I just don't know. I have it back fresh in front of me, and I'm like, I need cost, I need money, I need dollar signs, so I know what I'm approving or not approving.
Yeah. And, we wanted to, and I think we continue to approach this program very cautiously. It's obviously very sensitive. And so we want to have the council kind of approve each step as we move along. So it is my intention, if you want to move forward, to go ahead and develop those costs. And I don't think, when we do an RFP or an RFQ, it's really our staff time to write it. So it's not, I'm not going to ask you for 30,000 or 40,000, to have somebody else work on it. It's going to be a staff effort.
Okay. And what dollar amount is the DDA talking about to help us with program 1?
They really, I don't think they had enough information to really add a value to it. They just said that, at least in their discussions, they were concerned about paid parking because they just didn't have enough details to really to say yes or no. And so the one thing that they could say was that they like the idea of enforcing the regulations we have, and they might be willing to contribute to it. So no dollar value.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for the work you do.
Well, and Deborah, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce that. I know Terry has said this, but like what we're really trying to get tonight is not approval for any money to spend, but just what do you guys think you can really support? This is a big decision. And, I didn't want us to waste, hundreds of hours of staff time bringing you a fully developed program with costs if we're only lukewarm about the idea. So that's really what we're trying to get to is, what do you think you want to do? And then we'll bring back all that information and you'll know what you're approving before we spend money.
Okay. Ingrid.
I somewhat had my answer to my question when Terry mentioned that the DDA has not, unilaterally given their support for this. That there seems to be some missing pieces, but that the overriding from both the Transportation Commission and the DDA and all just begun, just this broken record of these guiding boards and commissions we have yet to say it's the right time and it's the direction we should go. So I'm going to weigh heavily on that. But my question is, what have they said? They'll give us a statement at some point soon of where they're at, and what do we need to give them in order for them, like the DDA, to get there?
So I would say that the Transportation Commission has supported option 2, and they would like to add to option 2. I think for the DDA, we could bring this back to them at their next meeting. And I know certain members of the DDA are concerned with the discussion and really would like to have more discussion around, the elements of a potential paid parking program. And so, with Christian and Laura's help, we might be able to get onto the next DDA agenda and hopefully, discuss and maybe have some consensus. I think it's difficult for them also.
Yeah, and it probably impacts certain members that are more representative or certain industries more than others. Is that a pretty fair assessment? Yeah.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. Thank
Chair,
you,
just
Chair,
a reminder.
for all this hard work. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Jillian Sutherland's going to be coming on board next week, not Laura. So you should work with Jillian on that.
Thank you, Charlie.
Councilor Davis.
See. Yeah, I don't know. I've been on council a long time. We've been talking about this since I think I first came on, and it always just gets batted about this way, and nobody can make a decision and nobody can move it forward. And now we need another study, and now we got the study, but we still can't seem to move things along. I would tell you that I am a long time downtown retail business person. As most of you know, parking is always the issue. That's always the comment we get from our customers as to why they don't come downtown, because they just can't find parking. To quote Todd Leahy, of course, it's Glenwood doesn't have a parking problem. It's got a walking problem. You can always go down to the sewer plant lot and find a parking space, but people want to park right in your back door. For that reason, I would strongly support enforcing what we have. I think we should get away from the chalk. I think we should increase the fines to help cover some of those costs, because I know as you go towards more technology and license plate recognition, I guess technology, that's going to cost a little more. I also think we need to go partly into option 2, but I'd like to, take that as a small step. I don't think that we should throw down parking meters on the streets to begin with. I think that we should have paid parking in our 3 off-street lots. That would be the city garage. That would be the lot across from the library. And of course, the lot behind Smoke. Those wouldn't have to be elaborate systems, and I think you can hire actually a contractor to do that for a percentage of the take. You go to Idaho Springs, which is a small community, and their lots, if you're on their off-street lots, you have to pay with an app to park there. There's no gate, there's no tickets to take. It works really easily. And seems like if Idaho Springs could do it, Glenwood Springs could figure that out as well. That being the case, I will make a motion to option 1 is to enforce what we have currently in place. I'd like to also increase the fines to some extent, and maybe that's done with that automation. And I'd like to put in place the parking fees for those 3 lots.
I'm going to second Steve's motion.
Thank you.
Real quick, folks, I think we should take public comment on this, if that's okay. We do have a motion in a second.
That's what I was going to ask, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
But Mr. Mayor, when we're done with public comment, may I have an opportunity to comment briefly on this, please?
Of course.
Thank you so much.
Excuse me. Okay, we'll turn it over to public comment. I see one hand up. Mr. Robert Bob Litter. Help me out here, Bob.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Hi, Bob.
Hi there. I own, my wife and I own the Melby building, 823 Grand Avenue, have done so for 9 years. And I've had an engineering business downtown for 23 years. I feel definitely that the parking issue is a major issue for downtown retailers and restaurant operators, and that something definitely is going to be done about it. I think enforcement needs to be increased, and would fully support that. If it's got to be parking meters, then so be it. Although I would be afraid that would push more people out to the meadows and it would harm the downtown businesses. As an office worker and in sympathy with the office workers, I feel the office workers are very unfortunately picked upon, scapegoated, considered second-rate citizens and nuisances, and that putting a fee for parking in the parking garages and the off-street lots is really harmful to those people who can use those facilities to keep off of the streets. And if anything, we need more off-street parking. And there's always been talk about another parking garage. Hopefully that will come to fruition sometime. But I definitely would be dead against putting additional fees on parking garages and off-street lots. I also will comment that a lot of our buildings downtown, including ours, which is one of the newest, do not have associated parking facilities with that, and we have to use the parking garages and so on to encourage office people to come and lease from our building. And if we put a charge on that, it is going to hurt our buildings. I'll also comment that the most of the public servants and many of the bigger businesses downtown do have their own parking, so it would hurt small businesses, in my opinion. So thank you very much.
Jonathan, you're muted.
That's why. Sorry, I'm coughing my lungs out here. I was going to say I can't see anybody when that timer's up. So I have 5 more hands that have jumped up. So former Counselor Merritt.
Unmute. Okay. Yeah, I'm Dave Merritt. I live in South Glenwood and work downtown. I bike when I can. However, much of the year it's not really possible. This, especially putting a parking fee on the lots and the parking garage is very adverse to the folks that work downtown, whether the office workers or retail workers. Have anybody calculated what the impact is going to be to reduction in sales tax by folks who choose to not go downtown to shop, whether it is at Treads or a downtown drug? If you're having to pay an extra, $2 just to stop in and see if they've got the right size shoes for you, it might be easier just to order on Amazon. In addition, we have not had any public transit for 20% of the city since I left council in 2009. And so there really is not an alternative to driving downtown for much of the year. And so this really is something that is ill-timed. And I don't think it's been vetted with the businesses properly to see what the impact is really going to be, and are there better ways to do it? When Janie was the parking manager attendant, she seemed to do a very good job of getting around and keeping vehicles moving along. It's going to have an adverse impact to the veterans coming to the Veterans Resource Center, not being able to park there without paying an extra couple bucks. So I think this is something that is ill-timed and ill thought out still. Thank you.
Thank you, former Counselor Merritt. You did your Cub Scout troop well.
Boy Scout troop.
Boy Scout troop. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're older than Cubbies now, so.
No longer Cub Scouts. I'm sorry
Nope.
if I did. All right. Next, Mr. John Zielinski. John, can you unmute yourself? There you go.
All right, there I am. Hi, guys. John Zelinski, live in Glenwood, have a couple businesses and a couple buildings in downtown. And I think I sent all of you a letter. Hopefully you all read it. I'm a believer that we need to have solutions that aren't being discussed right now. And I put a bunch of ideas in the letter, but even that last mile where we're trying to figure out, bike share and things like that, that the big issue that we're trying to talk about right now is having enough spaces for people to park and not feel the congestion. And I'm not hearing any solutions other than deterring people from parking, of coming up with a solution of adding more spaces, maybe a garage, maybe some ideas that can bounce around other than penalizing people to park downtown. And our town is unique because it's sprawled out, where you're charging people who want to spend money and walk around downtown. It seems pretty punitive to our downtown area, where you could go other places and eat and other places to shop where you don't have to pay. But I'd rather hear solutions of increasing spaces. Here's some ideas. I saw at one time there was a picture of sharing a parking lot with the pool and connecting it to the pedestrian bridge, and just coming up with more ideas about increasing the number of spaces. I'm not hearing that. I'm just hearing ways to deter people from just being downtown. And I'd rather hear other solutions rather than coming up with ways to kind of charge people money to park downtown. I should also add that I'm on DDA as a board member, and the discussion that did come up was that we don't enforce our current parking fees at all right now. And I think that's a good step. And let's start there and come up with other solutions for more spaces, or that last mile where we're dealing with bike share, and give people other options. That's my comment.
Thanks, John. Next. We have Ray. Ray, could you give your name and if you're a citizen?
Yes, thank you very much. Ray Tenney, 928 Cooper Avenue here in Glenwood. And I sent council an email earlier today with some comments about the charging of fees to park in the parking structure, which has long been relied upon in permitting developments within the GID, the General Improvement District, and not requiring any off-street parking. Just 2 doors from us, 9 units were approved in 2017. And the parking garage was relied upon as meeting or ameliorating the parking demand, which that development would create within the current code. I'd also like to say that while it's laudable to get people out of their cars, your parking fee structure and plan seems to push people who would otherwise maybe not move their cars for the day into a situation where they would have to move their cars. And so there are residents on our block, we know people's cars that use the parking garage on a regular basis, particularly this time of year when snow removal has clogged up the spaces. And if they were charged to use that parking garage and they worked from home, they would be out moving their car just to avoid having to pay. So I would urge council to really consider what they built the parking garage for, and that charging to park in it is going to put the 50 to 60 cars that are in it daily out into the neighborhoods and even in front of some of your businesses. So please carefully consider whether you want to charge for the parking garage that was actually built for the residents of this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Tim.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I'm Tim's daughter. I live in this area. I've lived here my whole life. And clearly it doesn't seem like anybody is in favor of this. So I'm going to be really brief because I just want to reiterate some things people have said. I did a little bit of back of the envelope math. And even if you only charged 50 cents an hour to park in some of these places, wage workers who come from out of town in cars would be charged upwards of $800 a year to park in our town. You know, some people's entire paycheck would go to, well, once a year, my entire paycheck goes to pay to park. And like what was just said, with people are just going to not park there. They're just going to park in front of our houses, in front of people's businesses. And the parking garage that taxpayer money went towards to build is going to sit more empty than it sits sometimes these days, because it's very rarely, in my experience, 100% full. And I don't know what the benefit of doing this would be necessarily. Do you have anything?
I'm also in the room. I'm her brother, and I also think that would be a
Sir, could you identify yourself, please?
Oh, my name's Curtis Madden. For the record, I am against that, and that is all I have.
Anyway, just multiple perspectives from people who live in the town. I don't think that this would be wise. I think it would be bad for wage workers. I think it would be bad for tourists, and I think it would be bad for the people who live in the town. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Carolyn Meadowcroft. Oop, Carolyn, I accidentally. Okay, maybe Sandy Haber?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, it's Sandy Haber. Hi. I have mixed feelings about paid parking, but the one thing I'm strong about, Steve, is having things done strictly with apps. Pretty much everybody has a credit card or a debit card these days, just like the machines that they use up in Aspen. I use little phones. I don't have $1,000 iPhones, and I can't put a lot of apps on my phone. There are a lot of older people without app knowledge, and there's a lot of people still using flip phones. So all I'm asking is, if you do end up doing paid parking, that credit cards are also available to be used and not strictly have this for apps, since you mentioned that's how Idaho Springs is doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Carolyn, I think, okay, I'm going to have you go next. I'm sorry, I had fat fingers, but go ahead, you're up.
Okay. Thank you. I do not live in Glenwood. I live at West Bank Mesa, but I did work at Vector Bank for many years at the corner of 8th and Grand. And this is a small thing, but every day, my window faced 8th Street. Every day I would see people parking willy-nilly everywhere. If there was room for 2 cars, they would park in the middle. And it would seem to me a small improvement would be to paint the lines on the parking spaces on the street, so that people would then park between those lines, and you could get several extra spaces, you know, at any given day all over town by just making sure the lines were there. Now, that was all my comment. Also wanted to let you know I'm here with the Boy Scout Troop 225 as well. So thank you for your shout out to us.
Carolyn, thank you very much for helping me with my refinance several years ago. Thank you for the comment on painting stripes. It's a very practical, small step. And thank you for your volunteerism with the Boy Scouts. So thank you for all of that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, take care. Ken Murphy. Mr. Murphy, I'm trying to get you. Did you step away for a second, Ken? There you go. Okay. Did I screw up here somehow?
I don't see him promoted, Jonathan.
I kept trying to push allow to talk. Okay, there he goes. There he is. Okay, Mr. Murphy. You're live. We can't hear you.
Ken,
Ken, are you here?
Yes, I am.
There we go.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Hello, John? Yes. As you might be all aware, I've been in the midst of the parking issue down on Cooper with a number of businesses downtown. And I do have to agree with all the past comments on paid parking in the parking lots. I think the issue is more of a closer to the downtown core. And I think I wouldn't have any issue at all with paid parking on the lower part of Cooper or 7th Street. We have to figure out a way to turn those parking spots over to create more business and push people towards the parking lots. I think one of the Victoria Madden pointed out that the parking lot is generally empty and there is spots to be found there. But as you get closer to town, we have a tendency to have parking spots not turning over. Again, it is an enforcement issue. Maybe if we had better enforcement, those cars would turn over more. So I think when you talk about stage 1, stage 2, it's also a seasonality. We don't need paid parking at this time of the year. We need paid parking maybe in the closer to the areas at certain times of the year. So again, as a business owner, I may be of the minority to say that I do think we need some paid parking, but I don't think we need paid parking in the lots. We need to be able to divert our employees to those lots versus having our employees go closer to where the businesses are in the downtown core. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Anybody else from the public? Mr. Hertz.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, counselors. We're on the topic of paid parking in downtown Glenwood Springs. We've gone this route many years ago. We did away with it. It's not going to help the businesses downtown in the core. If we're going to do paid parking, then we should implement that over at the Meadows as well, because with all the construction going on at the Meadows and the lack of parking spaces over there, is that going to turn around parking spaces? I don't know. One of the things I wanted to bring up off topic was just, we had a screen where all the council members were on screen. I don't know if that's possible that we can implement that into the council meetings so we can see all the councilors instead of just people that speak at that time. Anyways, paid parking's not going to work in downtown Glenwood Springs. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hertz. Kevin Brady.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to just say thank you to Matt and our 3 crew for taking such great care of our downtown businesses and removing all the snow in a tremendous storm. They did a fantastic job. We've been talking about the paid parking for quite some time now, and I think Sharon and I have spoken at each one of them. I like what Charlie and Steve are proposing. These are some things that were actually brought up in DDA. One is the enforcement piece with increased fines. I would say DDA strongly encourages that, but also the paid parking for off-street lots, with perhaps maybe the exception of the lot up on 9th Street. only because that was never designed for that. And people are already parking there, are making a strong effort to not clog up the streets. Also to, the hard part that we're having difficulty in terms of grasping is there was some street parking changes made to our business years ago in Cooper, which decreased our sales by over 15 to 20%. And we're fearful of the fact that we're saying that paid parking will open up 15% more occupancy. So that is a big factor for us in not being for paid parking. The one thing I would like to ask with Steve's proposal is, would we also have or implement the piece where there's an investment towards some sort of technology, or is that something that we budget for? Because the one thing about this that is kind of aggravating for us is that paid parking has been on everyone's radar, but is paid parking a budget line item in the city budget for 2022? And if not, maybe we don't do the paid parking technology right now, but work with enforcement with increased fines, only to know that in the future of 2023, that we will be implementing some sort of procedure in terms of technology. Terry herself went ahead and said that the RFP and the RFQs in terms of finding out the actual cost of all this is not very expensive and will roughly take about 8 weeks. Thank you for all your time. I'm sorry that we have to keep on discussing this, but it's a very important issue for so many people, not just the businesses, but also the locals that want to come and shop at our stores. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Mr. Brady, and Sharon as well, who's probably attending and listening. Okay, I have a name here, Ostrowski. Mr. or Mrs., you're up. Please give us your full name and if you're a resident or not.
Hi, my name is Bethany Ostrowski. I am a resident of the city, and I would like to just agree with Todd that said that it's nice to see everyone on the council, not just who's speaking at the time. It's really hard to follow what people are doing when we can only see one face. I live near downtown. I work downtown. I'm lucky enough to work at an organization that has parking, and so it's not really an issue for me. But my question is, why wouldn't you do stage 1 before moving into stage 2? From what I see, there's no enforcement of any of the parking laws right now. And I just wonder, why would we enter into the process of investigating more costs and more fees and more inconvenience when we don't enforce what we have? My second point is, if this is a revenue issue, I lived for many years in Australia where they implement speed cameras and red light cameras, and that doesn't happen here. And if it's a matter of wanting to make the downtown and our town safer and also raise money, why wouldn't we just put in these cameras to catch people when they're running through the red lights, speeding through crosswalks? There just seems to be a lot of other options other than just charging people to park where we don't really have any parking available anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other attendees like to speak on this issue? Going once, going twice. Okay, public comment is closed. I will bring it back to council. We did get a motion before we took public comment, so that's on the table, but I see literally everybody's hands up. So we are going to go Shelley, Tony, Paula, Charlie, Steve, Ingrid, and that's probably good enough. Go ahead, Shelley.
Okay, I would just like to ask council, well, first of all, I'd like to say thanks for all the great public comment. I think we have a long way to go on this. And as Terry Parch mentioned in her presentation, we want to proceed very carefully with this. So, and that's why, I guess, Steve, I'm going to ask you on your motion. You know, it seems like I can't support Steve's motion because it's jumping to trying to solve a problem that, what Terry came before us tonight was to ask for direction on how staff can proceed carefully to figure out, working with option 1, working towards option 2, figure out costs on what that would be, but also how much would it be to bring on a consultant to do this carefully, which I think we all want to do. And from all the different public comment, there are a lot of different needs to consider. There are the employees downtown. There are the different businesses needs, whether you're an office worker or a retail company. There are the residents' neighborhoods that are around there. So I can't support a motion that jumps to conclusions or directing staff on how to do it. I don't think it's our job on council. We don't have the expertise to design a paid parking program or any kind of parking program. And I don't know if Steve, if you're willing, but can I put forth an alternate motion? Because not at this time.
No, I mean, you can make an alternate main motion, I believe, but if you're asking Councilor Davis to amend his motion, I think that's one thing. But if you want to make a completely different motion, I think our options are you can either make an alternative main motion or just wait and see if his fails or passes and then put forth your own.
Okay, I would just propose that we did have a Transportation Commission Tuesday morning. They've given this a lot of thoughtful consideration and listening to comments from the DDA. And their recommendation was to move forward. Basically, they support option 1, but they support going ahead and having Terry Parch and staff move forward with getting the pricing for option 2. How do we even go about looking at paid parking if we decide we want to go there after implementing option 1? So, and then they also had those other recommendations that Terry talked about, things like maybe you have time limits on parking to where your first 15 to half an hour is free and you pay if you're there for a longer amount of time. So if someone wants to do a quick drop into a store, like I go downtown and I pick up a CSA in the summer. So I need to go into that shop. I'm there for 5-10 minutes. I'm in and out. But, having better managed and possibly paid parking in our downtown would enable something like that where I need my car to go pick something up. You can go in there and actually find a spot. But I don't want to try to design that. I don't think it's council's job. So I guess I would propose that if Councilor Davis would consider that we would just answer Terry's question, what she brought to us tonight, which is to please give her direction. Do we want to go ahead and pursue, just exploring managing it better, or do we want to go ahead and do that, but also get a consultant to find out how much it would cost to design a paid parking system? We don't want to design that system. So I would propose that we take Transportation Commission's recommendation is to support option 2 with some of their additional options that they had, which were to, look at timing, look at transit passes as incentives, look at, free parking passes, things for the employees, other things like that. So I don't know if Councilor Davis is willing to amend that motion, but I'm hoping council won't go down the road of trying to design this system.
So just as a point of clarification, Shelley, program 2 recommends that we implement paid parking from 9th to 7th, as well as a parking structure and off-street lots. Is that your suggestion? Is that your motion?
That was Transportation Commission's recommendation, but we're not implementing that tonight. All Terry's asking tonight is, should she use some funding to go ahead and explore that option so we can find out, what it would cost, hire a consultant to look at paid parking, which I thought was the direction we were going.
We might need some clarification from Terry, and I'm sorry, maybe this is my confusion, but I don't understand. I don't see anything in the staff report about hiring a consultant. So Terry, can you clear that up a little bit? I'm sorry, Shelley. I just want to make sure we're
That
clear.
was my understanding. Yeah, go ahead. Maybe I have it wrong.
No, and I might have explained it poorly, but what I really wanted was just the council's direction to move forward. And in my eyes, moving forward is putting together an RFP or an RFQ that would be developed by staff with no cost to go out to, Jen and Brianna and I and Linda all met with 4 different consultants and asked them to maybe give us pricing on both options. Option 1, what would it cost to do option 1, and then what would it cost to do option 2? And because option 2 includes all of the items from option 1. So really what we would be asking for is for a consultant, or not a consultant, but a parking management company to give us costs. So no cost for the council really at this point in time. We would be just asking for your direction to say, hey, we think it's a good idea to move it forward. That's really all.
And Terry, under that scenario, if council gave direction for option 1 or option 2, would that then come back to council for a decision on, once a plan was kind of roughly developed, we would then be looking at it and saying, yay or nay, this is the way we want to go?
Absolutely, yeah. It would be helpful for me to have just at least an outline, because option 1 and option 2 were outlines that I wanted to provide to a company, because the first thing they're going to turn around and say, because what we heard from these parking management companies is that they have just an amazing amount of technology, software, and hardware as well, kiosks and everything else that you can imagine. So they're going to say, what do you want? And I have to give them at least an outline of what we want. So option 1 and option 2 are outlines. And then with those, I would discuss more with them about, timing, revenues, that kind of thing, and then bring it back to you guys for a decision.
So, my comment on that is, rather than us trying to figure that out, let's give Terry direction. If we want to explore paid, let's not decide tonight, are we charging in the garages? Are we charging on the street? Let's let the experts do that. But, so I would recommend going with Transportation Commission's recommendation on this issue. That's my 2 cents.
Is that a motion? An alternate motion? What are we looking at here?
Well, I'm hoping maybe Councilor Davis would reconsider his motion and the second, but that's up to him.
And clarity again is that we are just saying, yeah, find out the pricing tonight from what Terry just said. Is that correct for both programs?
Yes, Deborah, City Manager Figueroa.
I think we really want to get from you tonight, and not that you're putting this in stone and you can't change your mind, but we really want to know before we do more is if this is something council thinks they want to do, right? Because do you, if you ask us to go get pricing on paid parking, I want you guys to really think you want to do paid parking, because the pricing it'll pay for itself, right? It will. So it's more of, do you guys really want to do this?
So that's different than that was just told to us. That's different than was just told to us, because I just understood that we're just looking at pricing so you guys can make a decision.
But it still comes back to us to make a decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to send us down a rabbit hole if there is not the political will to do paid parking. So yes, I'm not asking you to spend money, and I'm not asking you to make a final decision that you can't unmake, but we really wanted to take this slow and really not come to you with a fully developed plan if in the end we don't want to do paid parking. So we're really checking in.
Can we get a check-in though? Does it have to move forward to a fully developed plan, as opposed to, if we do go out to RFP, let's say we want to explore paid parking, coming back to us at some intermediate term where there's some different options we can look at?
100%, absolutely. We want to take this.
Yeah.
If you guys want to do paid parking, we want to do it. We will figure it all out. We'll bring it back. We'll come and check in. We will do this slowly, and we will do this the right way.
Well, And Deborah, can we also, and Terry, question for you, can we also implement basically option one, which is bring in the equipment, get the better management, get up the fees for violations, things like that, as we possibly work towards paid parking? I mean, again, doing this carefully, trying to do it well so that we don't disrupt businesses or residences and to the minimum.
Mr. Mayor, can I put in my 2 cents, please?
Yes, Councilor Hershey, you've been very patient. However,
Calp's asked a lot of questions and talked a lot. I really haven't had an option to talk, and I have an answer for Deborah's question.
Okay. If Deborah could answer Shelley's question really quick, we'll tie a bow on that and then we'll go right to you, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, we could start implementing option one. Understand it is difficult to hire people, right? It is absolutely difficult. So, but yes, we could try to hire. We're struggling to hire one person. We can struggle to hire 2 more people at the same time. And yes, we can look at fees and we can look at all of that. And we can continue to look at how we start to implement paid parking, of course.
And I would just add that, you guys talked about budget. There is no budget line item for this right now. So anything we do, add people, add cars, add technology, we're going to have to come back for a budget amendment for you. So even, option one is, enforce our existing regulations, and we'll be coming back to you with, costs to do that.
Councilor Hershey.
Mr. Mayor, the world has grown so bad that wrens make prey where eagles dare not perch. That's from Richard III. And what it's saying is the world is upside down, and I just don't understand what we're doing here. Deborah, I will answer your question. No. I agree with my neighbors like Victoria and other people. I don't understand. I think I understand Steve Davis's plan, and he's been talking about this for a long time, but I don't see why we're imposing another obligation on the citizens of this community that have undergone so much. I-70 closes every other day, snowstorms, COVID, streets, water issues, electricity. That's what they want us talking about. Victoria said, I don't know anyone who's for that. And I guess I know a few business owners who are for this, and maybe they think they're for it until we rip out those parking meters like Deborah Figueroa did in the city where she used to work. But I just really think this is a terrible idea. I don't support it at all. I think it's premature. And I think what Dave Merritt said is really true. I think he said, and I wrote it down, it's ill-timed, and that's a good word. And I think that's where I am on this. It is ill-timed, it is premature. And I know Mr. Davis will say, we've been talking about this for years. Well, maybe we have to talk about it for another 4 years, because now is definitely not the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Hershey. Councilor Stepp.
I tell you what, Shelley's comments, I've just kind of moved in a whole new direction of what we were trying to do. So I don't think I can support Steve's amendment right now. Steve's proposal right now, just because I'm not ready to jump into let's make these parking lots paid. And if he'd consider amending it so that we're really looking at taking this in steps. Although I do remember this from November, is at the end of our discussion, we were like, all right, we're going to move forward slowly on this and try to implement some of this program one. And that is what I remember as direction at that point in time. And so I'm a little confused why we're back at this point saying, yes, we still want to implement program one, because I'm pretty sure council wanted to do that we wanted to change some stuff to start happening.
Holly, you can't get direction in work session. So that was, we were explaining it and we told you we'd come back for a decision.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to still stand with program one is what I was looking at. And if we're going to look at options to see what it costs to put up a paid program, I would consider that, but I'm not ready to jump into setting up paid parking in the parking lots right now without some idea of cost.
Thank you. Councilor Willman.
Yeah, I guess I'm disturbed by the nature where we've strayed in this issue. I thought we're looking for direction to staff to what we need to do next. So I'm going to give just my comments where I think we ought to be going. I'm not going to support the current motion because I think we're saying it the way I understand Steve's motion, and I appreciate his frustration that it's taken a long time to get to solving the parking problem. And I think I agree with what Steve said and what Talay said. I don't know if it's a parking problem or it's a walking problem, but we don't know the answer to that. And jumping into some kind of paid parking or some other program may or may not be warranted. I'm not saying I would not support paid parking at some point. I'm just not willing to support it now. Here's what I think. The motions that currently stand says we're going to do program 1 plus program 2 with a limited level. So what I see with that is we just approved, we're going to purchase license plate recognition vehicles, software for 2 officers. We're going to approve hiring 2 officers. We're going to approve adding software for chicken management. And I have no idea what the costs are, but as I recall our last meeting, they were fairly high. And I'm not sure that I wouldn't support those high costs, but I want to know what they are. I can't support basically something that I don't know what it is. I don't know what the parking plan is. I don't know what the impact on the neighborhoods is from if we put this plan in place in this area. Are we talking 9th and 7th between all the way to Pitkin to, I guess it's even School Street up to Garfield? Or are we talking about 9th and 7th in between Cooper and Colorado? I don't know where the areas are. The reason we don't is because I don't think Terry anticipated, she's indicated that this was a final kind of, hey, let's adopt this. I don't know that we have fully vetted a paid parking or program or some other type of program sufficiently among those people that are going to be affected by it again. And that's the downtown businesses and the downtown neighborhoods. And I don't think we've given them a chance to look and say, here's the plan we're thinking about. What do you think about this particular plan? So I think we're jumping the gun again. And I think we're getting ahead of it. It's my view that we should try enforcement first. I like the ideas that have been promoted. We need to make sure we've got the spaces marked. We add additional spaces. We find ways to try to get the employees downtown to park in the remote parking areas rather than in the downtown parking areas, so that we can have those available for our residents who want to shop downtown and for our visitors who come into downtown and want to shop downtown, want to come downtown and go to the restaurants. I want to look at, do we have a 1 hour free period, a 1.5 hour free period so people can do restaurants? I'm not capable of making those things, as other people have said, but I need somebody to tell me this is the plan and this is why. The one concern I have, and with all due respect to Terry, is I'm not sure if we're looking at, so I think we just start program 1, which is an enforcement. We don't get to paid parking. Given that, I don't know why we have a transportation director, Linda Dupriest, who is a very bright young lady and can come up and say, we looked at the cost, and if we're going to have license recognition, the cost range from $50,000 to $100,000. And I heard the numbers a lot higher when I heard them last time. So I don't want to be quoted for those being the right numbers, but I want to know what those are and say, if we have that and we could say we're going to have enforcement, means number 1, we're going to enforce, this is what we're going to enforce. We're going to allow free parking for a period of time. After that, it's X number of dollars per hour. After that, it goes up. I don't know what those look like. And then what revenues does that bring in? If we do an enforcement program that makes sure that people aren't misusing the spaces, aren't doing the parking space dance, then we may find that we don't need a parking structure. That's the red herring out here. That's why I think we need to move forward with something. I do think it's a time to figure out what's the next move. Because a parking structure, I remember the quotes are $35,000 to $50,000 per space. And I think we got to make decisions before we start spending. Oh, Deborah just said I was low. I could see her hand going up. So I won't be quoted. I'm remembering numbers, and I'll take the old person syndrome that I don't remember the numbers well. But I think we need to know those things. So my view is we should defeat this motion. We should direct Terry and staff if they can, and if they can't do it, then come back and say, we really can't do it. We really need to get a RFP and do that. They have to tell us that by the next meeting. I'm not looking for a long delay. And Deborah, tell me if if I'm overstating, but I would think that Linda Dupree and Cherry could say, I think we can do this on our own, or I really think we need to get an RFP, and we think the cost of this would be an RFP. If we did it, would cost the city X number of dollars. I just don't want to pay for another study that's not going to tell us anything we don't know. So that's my view. Deborah, I see you want to chime in, and I appreciate it. So
we can get basic costs from parking vendors very easily. They aggressively want to give us those costs. That is not an issue. I mean, the issue I am really trying to drill down on is, A, do you want us just to go further enforcement? B, do you want us to actively move towards paid parking? Or I guess maybe C, do you want us to go towards enforcement while we're moving towards paid parking? And we can bring you back. You guys will get all those details, but I really just want to know is, what does council want to do? Big picture, 10,000 feet level. And there will be time to get into all those other details.
So thank you, because my answer to that question is, all I want to do at this point is to look at what would it cost to get a better enforcement program, increase fines, and then look at the results of that before we get into paid parking. That's my view.
Councilor Davis. Steve Davis.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think my motions were completely misconstrued. I was not actually directing staff to implement anything. Staff was asking if they should go forward and study this further, and if we would support something coming out of that study, and that's what my motion was. I think that, number one, we need to enforce the parking that we have, period. We should do that tomorrow. If the quickest we can hire anybody with a piece of chalk, because now everybody in town knows that we don't enforce parking at all. I think that staff should go forward and get some RFPs out and talk to some vendors that'll give us pricing on these other options as we go forward. I'm not real excited about putting parking meters on the streets, but I am real excited about trying to move people out of these lots. My employees want to park right at my back door, and there's nothing I can do to tell them, to incentivize them to walk 2 blocks where there's a large empty lot with no cars in it, or virtually no cars in it. So anything we can do to move this forward, to try to open up some of those parking spaces, I think is really important for all of our businesses. I never tried to define this to the point that, we were telling them that there should be free parking for a half hour or not free parking for a half hour, or trying to drill down in that kind of detail. We don't have any of that information. Charlie, we have no idea what anything costs, and we won't until staff comes back to us. And I would hope when staff comes back to us, they give us a laundry list that we can choose from. Here's what it costs. Here's what the advantages and disadvantages would be of that program. And then we can act on that further. But to just one more time table this and do absolutely nothing is absolutely irresponsible and awful for downtown businesses. You cannot clog up all these parking spaces with employees and abandoned vehicles and storage of vehicles and give no opportunity for any parking for customers and clients that are trying to get in and out of these stores.
So Steve, if I misconstrued your motion, I will apologize to you. That's what I heard you say. And so clearly I didn't hear what you intended or what you said. I'm not thrilled with going forward the paid parking part of it, but if we get those 2 options, I would probably support your motion if that's what it is.
Can I ask?
I just have.
Well, hold on a sec. I think there's a lot of confusion about the motion. So, Councilor Davis, if you wouldn't mind withdrawing your motion potentially, I'm not going to suggest that, but I think there's just enough confusion on what your motion was. that if you would want to withdraw it and make a new motion after I hear from Councilor.
Well, let me just say, I think my motion should be withdrawn. Terry, what I heard was Terry asked us about option 1 and option 2. And my motion was in the affirmative option 1 and part of option 2. That wasn't telling her how to do her job. That's telling her to go out and get more information.
Gotcha. Councilor Wusso.
I too was able to support Councilor Davis's motion because the way I interpreted the request from staff, which I have an overriding confidence in, that they were presenting an idea to us, and I was comfortable supporting in kind of an inquisition on this. I have no skill set in parking. The reason I was comfortable with Davis's motion is because it exempted the 7th to 9th Street. And I wanted some confidence or some reassurance to those stakeholders down there that they are not going to have to see any rendering or idea that includes them. That if we are going to do this inquiry, it would be specific to the lots, which I am very comfortable looking at. At some point in time, there will be paid parking in the downtown core. But I'm in agreement with a lot of the other counselors this evening that I don't believe that right now is that time. However, I think that we can make baby steps and we can move towards that direction, knowing that we are going to grow, traffic will increase. However, until I have the feedback from the DDA and a nice clean recommendation that potentially includes dollar signs and numbers from staff, and quite a few other groups, I would definitely not be feeling comfortable moving forward. So the assumption that Steve's motion that I seconded was just this firm green light go on these lots without dollar signs or dates or implementation schedules. Unfortunately, it was completely misconstrued. So to give staff an answer, Deborah, you deserve this, and I want to do it well. I want to do it once, and I want to do it well. I want to hear from people on all sides that they're supportive. Maybe not that they're celebrating groundbreaking excitement over this, but that they have a comfort with moving forward. What I want is baby steps. So I am comfortable with program 1 and an inquisition into looking into those auxiliary parking lots to get an idea and maybe kind of a case study. And that's why I seconded it, which Steve, was I on the same page as you?
Yeah, I think so. Thank
Okay,
you. Maybe you'll have to restate the motions.
Okay. I'll just, shall I see your hand up? But I want to give a few comments before I go back for second rounds here. I think we're getting confused here on what staff exactly wants. And I think they want a clear signal vote from this council on if we are even willing to contemplate paid parking from 9th to 7th, including the city's parking structure and off-street lots. That is what they're asking. If there is no will, and I appreciate, and I think I actually agree with Councilor Davis and Councilor Wusso's suggestions about just the lots, but we heard different comments tonight from different members of the public that the last thing we want to meter is lots. We want to drive people to the free lots. So maybe metering the lots is not the best idea and forcing everybody to play the game of finding limited parking on the streets. I don't know. I don't think any of us know exactly because, yesterday at 3 o'clock, I went down to the smoke lot behind Councilor Davis's shop, and there's no parking. There is no off season. There's not a time or really a time of day when there's like a dozen spaces in any of those parking lots downtown. At least I have not observed it. I will defer to Councilor Davis and Councilor Willman who live and work in the downtown, work in the downtown core. But I think that the question before us is, do we give staff the direction to continue to pursue any sort of paid parking? Because we might at some point adopt some a little bit or all of it, maybe now, 2 years, 5 years from now? Or are we just not, do we not have the political will at all to go forward with it, to even give them that direction? And if that's the case, I think we should just go forward and say, make a clean motion, program one, get the, try to get somebody chalk and sure, whatever, but, run at and put a lot of energy and resources into a program that will cost us not significant. I don't want to, put pejorative connotation to it, but if we want to just enforce it and get the license plate reader and all of that, I think you're hearing, without a vote, I'm just going to summarize that you're hearing that we all support that, within reason. If it's $500,000 a year, maybe we don't. If it's $100,000 a year and some increased revenues can knock that down a little bit, I think you're hearing that. That's what I'm going to summarize from what I've heard of this council before we have a vote on it. I think, and Deborah, please correct me if I'm wrong and jump in and help me out here at any time, but I think they really want to know is, if we don't have a desire to potentially implement paid parking between 7th and 9th, and I'm going to say Colorado and Cooper, just to put some various definitions on it, they don't want to waste time of any vendor going and saying, will you please spend time and effort and energy pricing this out? We spent 2 more years spinning our wheels only to reach the same decision that we've continued to reach for the last 20 years. So that's, I think, what staff is looking for. And Deborah, say it better than I did.
No, I think you said it pretty well. We just kind of want to know, yes, or and you can change your mind. We're not saying you can't change your mind, but right now, do you guys really want us to go down the road of paid parking, or do you really want us to go down the road of just a lot stricter enforcement, or a combination of the two?
Well, and I guess I would say, just real quick, so I think we have a good thing, and I'll look for a motion, but I don't think the half full approach, or the hybrid approach of just looking at the lots, I would not be supportive of that. I would either say, let's just not even engage it if we're not going to contemplate it at all, or actually let's engage it. I think, Councilor Worcester, to your point, you need to hear from the DDA on it. I think that's actually very important for them to, and whatever it is, maybe they don't have enough information yet, like we are all struggling with, to make a definitive recommendation, and that's fine. But what we do have is we have another board or commission, and I think all of our boards and commissions are created equal under the eyes of God. But when we do have a board or commission that has studied this issue and is making a definitive recommendation for or against, that carries more weight with me than a board or commission that is not taking a position on it. And again, maybe they just don't have enough information, but I think I would be supportive of program 1 and 2, so that we have enough information, so that maybe the DDA or the chamber or FAB, because this is all impacts all of those organizations, can make a recommendation. And I'd like to see recommendations for or against this from all of those organizations. So with that being said, I don't believe we have a clear motion on the table. I'd love to have a motion that is a little bit more clear, at least for my conscience and state of cough medicine at this time of night. Go ahead, Shelley.
If I'm correct, Councilor Davis, did you withdraw your motion?
I would withdraw my motion. I thought I would make an amended motion, but
okay. Or I'm happy to.
But if you want to jump out
there, I would move that we give staff direction to pursue option 1, and also pursue exploring the option 2 of paid parking, including some of the suggestions from the Transportation Commission, and that we, with the intent of proceeding carefully, having good public process, so that we do this well as we move forward.
I would second that.
Moved by Shelley and seconded by Councilor Davis. Councilor Wusso.
And while I appreciate the motion and the clarity of it, I would not be able to support that, because I really want the assurance that there is no studying of any streets beyond just the parking lots. So that's where I am with that at this moment in time, until we have some better guidance.
And just quick, how would you suggest we get that better guidance, Councilor Wusso?
If we can make inquiries and requests to our boards and commissions that you just mentioned, and they come back with us and say, we are comfortable with having your staff look into this, then I would be comfortable having that next step.
Okay.
So if we want to incorporate that into a motion, then I would support it, but otherwise I'm not going to. I want that downtown core of businesses to feel very confident that unless their representatives, which that's what the DDA is, unless our representatives are encouraging this, that we do not pursue it.
Okay. Paula, and then I saw Steve Davis's hand go up for a second, but go ahead, Paula.
Clarity, really all of those options would kind of be presented to us. Is that correct, Shelley? And is that correct, Terry, that here's what it would cost to do the downtown parking on the streets? Here's what it would cost to just do it in the parking lots. Those choices would be presented to us to look at and to the boards and commissions.
Yeah, we could break all that up.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Davis, you had your
Well, I
hand
just
up.
want to say that I'm supporting Shelley's motion because I think that it will come back with a laundry list of things that we can choose. Either we want, we like, we can afford, or we can't. And we'll have many options down the road to fine tune that as to on-street, off-street, lots, curbside, free for the first half. We'll have all those options. Right now, we don't have any options. We have no idea what anything's going to cost. So I think Shelley's motion just allows staff to move forward and have some confidence that we'll take some of that and make a decision on it when it comes back to us.
And that's my intent.
Can I make a friendly amendment or recommendation? Amendment, a suggested amendment to the motion. Regardless of whether or not Councilor Wusso ends up supporting it or not, I think incorporating that into this motion or future motions is important to have the FAB asking the chamber who represents all the businesses and what else did I say? FAB, chamber, and I don't know. DDA, yeah. Yep, okay. Thank you. To from what, as part of this process, as pricing and other things come up, that they are asked to make a recommendation for or against, I don't care, but those three boards, I would like to ask them to make a recommendation on that to help inform this conversation.
I would amend that if we would also include Transportation Commission.
Absolutely, and I only discluded them because they already have made that recommendation, but I will include them as well for argument's sake. Yes.
Yeah, and just full disclosure here, I would hope before we implement any paid parking ever, that we would have a very full public process that would include, once we have an outline of a planned proposal, which we don't have yet, but once we have something specific to talk about, that we would talk to the neighborhoods, the businesses, the boards. But yes, I will include those. Input from the boards in my motion.
And you're good with that second as well, Councilor Davis?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm exhausted over it.
All right. I think I don't see any more hands. I think we've exhausted at least the conversation on this motion. Ryan, let's call the question.
Councillor Kaup.
Yes.
Councillor Hershey.
No.
Councillor Wusso.
No.
Mayor Grotus.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman.
Yeah, if we're voting for what I think we're voting for, yes, I'm still confused with the motion, very honestly. So.
We're voting to create
yes.
more giant bureaucracy, Charlie, so your vote is yes.
Well, my vote is doubting.
Councillor Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Stepp.
Yes.
It passes 5-2.
Thank you, Council.
Okay. That's a little less clear than mine. Deborah, just before I'd like to take a little break, but before we do, do you feel you have clear direction from this council on the next steps of what you need to do?
I believe, yes, we'll come back with probably pricing for option 1 first, and then move into option 2.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any desire to have a 5-minute break before we do the last 2 items on the agenda? Okay.
Whether we just adjourn.
Yes, I move to adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor?
All right, we'll see you back at 8:55.
Another solution in search of a problem. Jonathan, are you feeling better?
You know, thanks for asking. I felt better after a couple days, and but then I had this lingering cough for like a week, just a horrible hacking cough, and then it was great for 2 days. I'm like, I'm over, I'm cured, and then today it just kicked back up, and I'm just hacking my brains out. So
That's what it does, I guess.
I thought I'd just get over it. Instead, I just take sleeping pills and NyQuil. Not together. Not together.
Tonight?
every night. Is everybody here? Enough people here?
I don't see Steve.
Jonathan, are you getting sick again?
Excuse me.
Yeah, I just today I just had this horrible like dry cough, and for the last 2 days I haven't. I'm blaming it on I worked out yesterday for the first time in a while, so I am totally blaming it on physical activity.
Okay. We will go with that.
All right. Let's go to item number 22, franchise management spring cleanup. Who am I promoting other than Matt Langhorst, who's already here?
Just me.
All right.
I didn't drag Liz into this one. She doesn't need to be part of spring cleanup conversation yet. I'd like to keep her for a little while longer. But she will be a very large part of the franchising conversation. I want her input into all of that since she receives most of the recycling and trash that we would be producing at that point. So, you know, spring cleanup has been basically canceled the last 2 years in a row, 2020, 2021. We put out vouchers so people could still bring things to the landfill for free. You know, it wasn't all that it's popular, yes, but some people are like, I don't have a truck, I don't have a way to get things there. So the voucher system, I would say, worked probably for 90% of the people, but not the other 10%. We are still recommending that we do not do spring cleanup this year. We're still trying to keep, with COVID resurgence that we have, keep employees out of the same vehicles, trying to keep them working in small groups so that we don't lose an entire department at one time, which we have basically done in the last few weeks, department by department. So, you know, the process that we'd have to go through does put a lot of people together in one spot. And I think the thing for me about spring cleanup is it was one thing in 1984 and it became a different thing in 2019. You know, we don't just go out and just take a big dump truck, pick everything up, throw it into the truck and haul it off to the landfill and dump it on the open face right there. We have to piecemeal through every single pile. We go through and pull all the metal out of it. We go through and pull all the electronics that aren't supposed to be out of it and put them back on the side of the road. We pull all the paint cans that aren't supposed to be there and put them back on the side of the road. You know, so it's not just an easy process of picking up these giant piles, which get out of control. Also, you're only really supposed to put a passenger truck size pile out there. In some cases, we get piles that are 2 dump trucks in themselves in front of one house. So when you leave the TV, you leave the paint, you only pick up a portion of the pile. That's when the angry phone calls start, or the people coming out of houses yelling at the guys. You know, we're just trying to do the best we could with the situation we had at that time. So I see the franchising discussion partially solving some of the spring cleanup discussion. You know, you read in the staff report, you know, we would like to move towards citywide franchising for trash hauling. I think almost all of you have brought it up at one point or another that we need to get all of these garbage trucks off of the street, because I think there's 6 or 7 haulers at this point and they all function in the city. So it's just more and more traffic of heavy trucks running around the city picking up garbage. But the benefit of it is if we modeled this after, we like Carbondale's model. They spent a lot of time on it. They made a few mistakes. They really backtracked on those mistakes. They've made mistakes since they implemented it, and they've told us how to get around those mistakes. And it's a really good program because you get to pick the size of container you want. You know, you get a 32-gallon container. You can have a 64-gallon container, you have a 96-gallon container. And 10 times in the summer, they pick up on Saturdays yard waste. And that's probably a bulk of what we get within spring cleanup. Everything's buried in it. But we get bulk is yard waste. 10 times a year in the summertime, they pick up yard waste. You know, it's part of the franchise agreement with Mountain Waste, who they use at this time because they were the bidder, the low bidder. But it provides that opportunity for people not to have to store up for the whole entire year. Hey, you had yard waste this week. put it out on the curb on Saturday and they'll come get that. And they also have a fee built in so that once a year, could be twice a year, depending on how you wanted to do it, they have a weekend collection where Mountain Waste runs for them a collection site. And they get to bring in the bigger things, the metals, probably even electronics. We can make electronics work because we work with Blue Star, those kinds of fun things. So it doesn't discount spring cleanup. It just spreads it across the summer, and it potentially spreads it into 1 or 2 weekends, depending on how we'd want to do it, where it's a large collection site. We'd still do hazardous waste day. We're not going to do times anymore. We're just going to open that thing up to whoever wants to bring hazardous waste to us, because time schedules didn't work at all last year or the year before, really. And we did do the one weekend where we put out there to the public and said, hey, we'll even come to you and pick up your stuff and bring it back. And to be honest with you, it wasn't overly successful. And I don't know if it was just people didn't get the word or what it was at that point. If they'd already used their vouchers and they'd already taken care of it. So, for 2022, I'd like to suggest that we kind of defer spring cleanup, do the vouchers again. We can do a hazardous waste weekend again. We'll do it a little earlier in the year instead of later like we normally do. And at the end of the summer, if you want to, we can do one of those trash collection days and just advertise the junk out of it so people understand it and do a big cleanup. But I want to move towards franchising. I've already started a conversation with Lori Batchelder about it. She helped Carbondale. She helped Pitkin County. She's the expert in these things. She's going to give us a proposal. We're going to chat with her next week. But we would like to have city council say it's okay not to do spring cleanup, do vouchers just like we did the last 2 years and kind of process it the same way, but also get the big thumbs up from you to go ahead and move towards franchising, get that process going, and bring it back to you with a presentation with Lori and myself and Liz, and start moving that direction. And I can provide you all the information you want on how Carbondale does it. I have all their information. I have the little yellow tickets they had to produce to solve some of the processes. There were the issues that were happening during the first couple of months. So we have a good direction, I think. And if you guys have read Carbondale's information, it's a really good program and it's very cost effective. Not a great presentation. I'm trying to keep it short for you. I know it's 9 o'clock and we just had a tough one.
I think because it was short, it was amazing and the best presentation you could have had.
I was going to give it to Carl, but I decided not to.
Well, we would be done our meeting right now if it was all Carl. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to do what Matt wants to do.
I'll second that. Further point of order, I think, from Councilor Willman.
Just a procedure question, Matt. I agree with the motion and I'm going to vote for it. But when you talk about the Carbondale franchising process, we're going to look at the franchising process and see if we want to do 1 or 2 or more haulers or things like that, right? We're not just going to, they just have 1 hauler, as I recall.
So yeah, they bid it out, and the best bid, which is not always the cheapest, sometimes it's the best service provided, if they're going to provide cans or not, those kinds of fun things. We would put this package together just like they did, say, this is what we want you to do, and then put it out to the haulers and say, how much is this going to cost? At the end of the day, Carbondale did have to hire another employee to basically run this. If you've dealt with trash, I only deal with 4 trash compactors downtown, and it is a daily thing to try to keep them up and running and answer questions and keep people kind of using them the way they're supposed to. We'll basically have to build into the costs an extra person to help run this, answer questions, do the billings, help Yvette or whoever it is out, do the billings, those kinds of fun things. But it will be another employee. But we would bid it out, yes. It would be a open bid for all the haulers to take a look at.
Thank you. I do see a member of the public that would like to comment. I'm inclined to take that, but I'd like to hear from Paula before we do that, just so we can all have a first round and then take public comment and then bring it back for either more conversation or a vote. So go ahead, Paula.
Thanks. Yeah, mine's a couple of questions. Matt, when I saw Silt do this, and then I kind of watched on some of the meetings when Carbondale did this, and then saw some of the results, one of the things that particularly impressed me on the franchise was it lowered the cost to what residents had been experiencing. Do you think we would see the same kind of thing by offering this citywide or neighborhood wide, or however we end if dividing it? Do you see we'll see those cost benefits to our community?
Well, I couldn't promise anything, obviously, but I know what I pay for trash from the same company that does this, and I know what I have, and the cost that Carbondale has for recycling and trash hauling with these containers is less than I currently pay on a monthly basis.
So there is that good possibility then.
There's a good possibility. It's the same thing with the compactors downtown. We actually lowered the cost for a lot of those businesses downtown by putting those compactors in and bidding out as one lump sum. So that is our intention, is to bulk this thing and make it so that it's efficient for the hauler to come in just one day, just like they do in Newcastle or Rifle or whatever, pick up everything in one day, basically, maybe two if we have enough. And then they're just out of town, and it's very efficient for them. They would actually probably purchase different vehicles to actually accommodate to do this in a rapid fashion like Newcastle has. They have the side loaders for the 96-gallon cans instead of hand dumping them into the back of the trucks as they currently do.
And have you, just in your general thoughts, just so I understand how you're thinking about this, are you thinking of this as one citywide franchise or one company doing citywide, or are you looking at sections of town offered to different franchisers?
So Carbondale looked at doing sections of town, north of the river, south of the river, whatever it was that they were looking at. Actually, they have A and B. It's one side of the highway versus the other. The problem with that is you have to get two haulers to agree upon pricing.
Okay.
So if you do that, you're really, what if one of them, their charges go up 5% or their fuel fees go up or more or whatever, you're really saying, hey, half of the town or a third of the town or whatever it is may pay more than this other portion of town. So it's a little bit problematic for some of the smaller haulers who may have to buy more trucks or hire more employees, or maybe they want to go together and put a bid together if they can't handle the whole town themselves, those kinds of things. So, you know, it's a little complicated. It's a little, it's a little complicated, but you have to do the city basically as one whole lump sum.
And from what the cities that you know of that did, like Carbondale, was there some kind of structure in place to not see a contract go out, and then as soon as that contract expired, we see a huge increase that we need to go out and restart the whole program again? I'm just kind of looking at how do we make this more than a one-year program?
If I remember correctly, Carbondale's contract is 5 years.
Okay.
And they have 1 or 2 5-year extensions allowed to that. And there's a certain percentage of increase. They sit down, renegotiate. How much is fuel? How much did the city of Glenwood Springs raise their municipal waste, you know, at the landfill? It's a sharing. They share in the costs together. So, you know, they may have to raise costs, but at the end of the day, most of the people's costs would have gone up anyhow, because that hauler's got those costs that they're already going to eat. And most of the time it's fuel and the cost of the landfill. It's not so much the employees or the trucks, it's those two other things. We've seen fuel costs go up quite a bit recently, and we get hit with those occasionally. So they basically a 5-year contract with a 5-year extension.
Great, thank you. Great presentation. It's nice and short, thanks.
All right, I'd love to take a public comment very quickly, not very quickly, as long as it takes, we will take former Councilor Merritt.
Okay, yes. Good evening again. I'm concerned over the loss of the spring cleanup. This is one of the few benefits that the everyday citizen gets in able to you know, and it really serves a purpose to the city in cleaning up the area and being able to put that stuff out at curbside every spring, clean up the brush, things like this. Most folks do not have a pickup truck to haul the stuff off to the dump, and so a voucher does a little good for many folks. And you know, if you're like me, if your pickup truck is a very small one, it doesn't do that much good either. And so it's really the loss of this, and saying that the spring process would be at a specific location. That means that you've got to haul it someplace. Again, for the average citizen, that is not viable. And to go to the franchising, unless you can get a cheaper price, there is no reason for the citizens to bear this additional cost. It's got to be a significant saving. And, especially if you're looking for a 5+5 year contract, it's a long time. You're locking in at a higher price. Right now, you can call around and get other prices and see who's most competitive. So thank you very much for your time. Good evening.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. And I guess I'll just make my comments very quickly. Is that I think one of the advantages of this franchise trash collection is it saves our street. There's not 8 or 6 or so beeping backup trucks every morning outside not every morning, but one like Wednesday usually in front of my house. Kids are outside playing, and having one big heavy machinery versus 6 is, I think it's going to be a win for our community. Excuse me. Sorry. But I do think that, to Dave Mayer's comments, that the real advantage of this franchise trash collection is every day or once a week, every week could be spring cleanup. I know I'll just speak for I have so much crap that builds up throughout the year on my own property that causes fire hazards, that is unsightly, that my neighbors don't appreciate, because I'm waiting for this one day in April. And if we could have a system, whether it is, we call it in special, whether it is 10 days, 10 weeks in the summer for yard waste, which is primarily my stuff as well, or whether it's twice a year for appliances, or however that works, then I'll be looking for recommendations from staff on what Carbondale and other places have done. But that's, I think, what's exciting to me is potentially every week is spring cleanup to some extent, and we just don't let that get build up. So I view this as a huge improvement on what spring cleanup is. So those are my comments. Any other comments? Okay. No, Matt.
Come on, give me 30 more seconds.
Go ahead.
I just want to mention that the things that Liz is doing at the landfill really help with this conversation. Also, free metal. You can bring your refrigerator up there for $30. That was a huge one during spring cleanup, as people just left refrigerators out with the Freon still in them. And that would be a 20-minute argument for whoever just bypassed the thing. So the things that Liz is doing at the landfill makes it so that you can take a small truckload up and get rid of that material. In case of metal, it's going to potentially be free here soon. And a refrigerator, you don't have to do anything with it. Just bring it to us and give us $30. So we're trying to help with some of these little nuances, these little recycling pieces, these little parts and pieces that we want to help people with at the landfill itself. It is a 7-mile trip, but at the end of the day, we're trying to make it better for everybody in the whole entire 81601 and Garfield County area. Sorry.
Okay. Shelley, go ahead.
I'll just say real quick, I'm going to support the motion. And thanks so much, Matt, for the recommendations and everything. I came here tonight ready to really argue for spring cleanup, because it's the one thing I do hear about from people in my neighborhood that they miss very much. But I'm impressed by all of the progress we've made at the landfill, and all of the environmental cleanup and the better processes, the composting, the the recycling of materials. I just think we're progressing as we move forward on that. So, and I look forward to the franchising conversation. So good job on all that. And I think I will support this motion and take the heat for the spring cleanup being delayed one more year. But the vouchers work well, so hopefully we'll see that again, and there'll still be options for people.
All right, let's call the question. Thank you, Shelley.
Mayor Pro Tem Willman,
Yes.
Councilor Wusso,
Yes.
Mayor Godis,
Yes.
Councilor Stepp,
Yes.
Councilor Kaup,
Yes.
Councilor Hershey,
Yes.
Councilor Davis.
No, yes.
All right, 7-1.
Thank you for taking the heat with me. I appreciate it.
Just, I didn't refund right, but just to clarify, it was a 7-0 unanimous vote, right?
It was, wasn't it?
Sorry about that. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve was 1-1, but then it was.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adjourn.
I'd second that.
Yeah,
How
there
about a
is
motion to table the next item?
I make that motion to table the next item.
I'll second that.
Okay, we do have a motion to table this last item by Tony and Steve Davis. Ryan, let's call the question.
Mayor Godus,
No,
I thought you weren't feeling well.
I'm not. I'm a dedicated public servant, and I know I'm gonna have to deal with it next time.
It's a waste of time, this whole discussion.
Counselor Kaut,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
No,
Counselor Wusso,
We're just voting to table the code of conduct dialogue. We're not adjourning, right?
Till the next meeting.
Okay, yes. I don't care if we take.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Stepp,
No, I'd like to get this done.
Thanks a lot.
Just
Counselor
wanna
Hershey,
finish talking about it and go on.
Means absolutely nothing. Yes.
all right, it fails.
All
4-3.
right, item 23, code of conduct. Charlie Willman, this is, I'm going to turn it over to you for a presentation, if that's appropriate.
my presentation is, as we've talked about it before, you have it in front of you. The three things you have are kind of a summary I did of the current code and charter as it relates to these issues. The code of conduct is a draft that was put together, I think, by Councilman Hershey, Councilman Voorhees, and myself early on with some input from Shelley. And then I took basically codes of conduct from, I think, about 10 different municipalities and tried to put them together. I had a wonderful 23-page document that Carl got down to 4 pages, which is much better. And that's what you have in front of you. The second part of it is rules of procedure, which is how we procedurally go through motions and to try to clarify some of the things that frankly didn't even happen tonight. And some of my frustration tonight is we don't know how to take correctly a motion from point A to point B, or an issue from opening it up to a vote and to get there. So I think the procedural thing will help with that. Other than that, because some people want to go home and or go to bed because they're already home, that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions I can. Carl can answer questions that I may not be able to.
Is that a motion?
Well, no, do you want to discuss it first? It's up to you.
But is someone going to make a motion to approve it, or?
I'll move to approve the code of conduct and the rules of procedure.
I'd second.
The motion by Charlie, seconded by Steve. Further comments, Councilor Stepp.
Just a couple questions. And I know this has gone through a lot of process, and Charlie, maybe this is you, or maybe it's Carl. There's a line in here saying secondary comments shall be restricted to responding to council member comments. So that seems a little restrictive in a bigger issue. And it really goes back to my concerns earlier in other meetings that we have adequate discussion about issues before we take a vote. And sometimes it's not just a response to another person's comment, but maybe an additional comment that you think of after you've made your first comment. So I'm a little concerned about that restriction, that it would just be a response.
And I apologize, Paul, it's been a while since I've read through this. So can you point to that particular paragraph? I think I know what you're talking about, but I showed you.
It is on page 1 of modified rules of procedure, number 5, last sentence under B.
I'm not wedded to any of these things necessarily. This is just, I think the rules of procedure are actually fairly well, significantly plagiarized from Bob Widner, who he's a municipal attorney for a number of municipalities and is the current CML board chair. But I think he had a set of rules. I actually took his and condensed them down, but it's probably from that. I think the concept behind this, Paula, and I'm not wedded to that particular provision, is you're really trying to narrow the conversation so we don't get into long rambling conversations. And I don't mean to be restrictive by what I put in here, but to try to get narrowing of the discussion.
Yeah, and I just kind of, the other part of that, Charlie, is I've just had a number of occasions where I've sat in these council meetings and somebody's turned around and directed a comment using a council member's name saying, well, I think Shelley's out of her mind and blah, 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 blah. And that opens that door to that a little bit by responding to somebody's comment. And I think that causes a lot of the problems that we're talking about in this code of conduct is when we are directing comments back to a particular other council person's comment. So that's the other issue I have with that. And the only other thing I have in here is that I have a question about, and I'm going to throw that out here at the same time too, is this new thing of council members will no longer be abstaining from votes. And so I just wasn't sure about that one. But my first one is really my bigger concern of that restriction of secondary comments, restricting to responding to other council people.
I have no problem taking that last sentence out of paragraph 5 of 1B5, that last sentence. I have no problem taking that out. As far as the votes, I think everyone should be required to vote. I think if you read the code, it kind of implies that, but it doesn't say it specifically, unless you're abstaining because you got a conflict of interest or something.
Well,
we're elected as.
If I may, Charlie, there's actually two differences there. One is a recusal if you have a conflict of interest, which is different than an abstention. Right. An abstention is I just want to pass, right? Because I don't want to comment on this issue. The charter requires a vote on all ordinances, but is silent, I believe, as to everything else. Just generally the kind of the informal practice of this council for the last 25 years has been that you guys vote on everything if you're here. So,
and I have seen that, but I think I can remember even a time in this last year that somebody abstained from a vote. So I just was kind of curious that we'd put that restriction on ourselves. I'm not married to that one. If we want to leave that in there as a council, that's fine. But Charlie, with your motion, if you could remove that last sentence in B5, that'd be great.
That's fine. I'll also amend my motion. Steve, you amend the second.
Yes.
Take that out.
Okay. I have a couple suggestions. Charlie, I've already spoken with you about these, but Roman numerals 4 and 5, I think we should be stricken completely. Council interaction with staff. I think if we wanted to rewrite that in order to outline how we should, in a ideal way as a council, speak with, speak to, and ask questions and direct the staff that we have a relationship with, I think that makes sense. But all this does in item 4, room number 4, is just repeat what's already in our charter. And if it's already in our charter, I don't know why it needs to be essentially repeated verbatim in our code of conduct. So I'm supportive of leaving that in there, but only in so much as it relates to our kind of subjective interactions with direct staff and with outside staff. So if somebody wants to give a crack at what that would look like, I'd be willing to put 4 or 5 bullets together if we wanted to keep that in. Otherwise, I think it's completely redundant to have just a repetition of the code or the charter in something like this. And then I think item 5, boards and commissions, the title of this document that Dr. Charlie is called the City Council Code of Conduct and Ethics of the City of Glenwood Springs. But then we start to go into how boards and commissions should also be acting in this way and how boards and commissions should do things. I think we're going to address that on the 27th, and they're going to have their own code of conduct, their own rules. And so I don't want to confuse this with how boards and commissions should behave, because then, well, what about ad hoc committees? What about staff? I just don't think 4 and 5, I think, to make it easy, could just get swiped out. I do see value in having item 4, council interaction with staff, be a little more fleshed out, to be consistent with the rest of the document. Those are my comments. So I won't support it. Go ahead.
I'll respond to 4. I think 4 says that except for purpose of inquiry, council shall deal with administrative functions of the city manager and shall not direct a staff member. It doesn't mean you can't interact with them. I don't think that's the intent of it. And as far as number 5, the other bullet point you talk about, that was in an earlier draft. I think in Carl, when he edited my fairly lengthy draft into a less one, we took a lot of those things out because they're implied. There's lots of detail that was in the original draft about what you could do and not do at meetings and things like that. This really went down to the basics. whether it's in the charter or not, I think having it in the code of conduct is important to say we are going to deal with staff through Deborah's office or Carl's office. We're not going to do it otherwise. And as far as the boards commissions, I think we leave it in. We take out, as I mentioned yesterday, take out the word city council and just call it the code of conduct. I do think it should apply to the boards. I don't think we're going to come up with a separate code of conduct for boards and commissions. I'm not invested in that exercise. So.
Yeah, I'm not
Right.
suggesting
It's
that
up to-
a separate code of conduct for the boards and commissions. I just don't think this is a document for us, and our guiding document. I don't think should apply to boards and commissions. They serve at our pleasure, and at some point they start acting up, then we can just let them go and not have them serve at our. I mean, we're elected officials. That's part of the deal. There's not a remedy to slap people on the wrist necessarily, or say you're doing, kick them out. But boards and commissions, we have that ultimate authority. I'm fine with keeping council interactions with staff. I would just like maybe on second reading before that to keep that in there, but instead of just again reciting what the code is or our charter, maybe flesh out a little bit of how that actually works, of what the three people are, what the questions are, what can we ask of. I mean, Deborah has a policy that we can ask other staff members questions, but not direct them. It says we can't direct them, but it doesn't say that we can ask questions. I think that's important to put in there. I think having a bullet point of saying we will treat them with respect at all times, both in public and private. Sometimes various members of previous councils and maybe even this councils have fallen short of that goal. So I would be very supportive of including several bullet points on 4.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, this is not an ordinance, so if you pass it tonight, it's just done.
Oh, okay. Well, then
It's the policy of council. This is not a code revision or anything like that.
Okay.
Carl, this would, correct me if I'm wrong, but this would take, there's going to need to be an ordinance to, actually to formalize this, I would think, into the code. And we'd also have to modify the parts of the code because there's.
Right.
Let me just finish this. We also need to modify the code because the code that allows for 5 minutes of public comment. We haven't allowed that for years. It's always been 3 minutes, and this changes that. If I'm wrong, Carl, let me know. But I assume that.
Yeah, there will be some things, but as far as these documents and the council code of conduct in particular, unless council wants to include that in the code itself, I had viewed that this was a policy document of the council, much like a set of bylaws, as opposed to an amendment to the municipal code. But it's whatever council wants to do.
Okay, any other comments? All right, there's basically I believe there's a motion to adopt it as it stands, with the exception of Paula's request to take out the thing she asked to take out.
Last sentence.
And I would
B5.
And I would remove the word city council of the code of conduct to get rid of any confusion on boards and commissions. Steve, if you would agree to that, just call it a code of conduct.
Yes.
There's
Okay.
also, there's a couple typos in it. Do we care?
I think
Yeah,
I can go through one more time once I have it, and we'll scrub for typos. I'm fine doing that.
I saw a couple too. Thanks, Steve. I forgot about that, but thank you.
Ryan, let's call the question.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Wellman,
Yes.
Councillor Cow,
Yes.
Councillor Hershey,
I am abstaining on this vote.
An
Councillor
abstention means yes, just so you know.
What?
And to abstain from a vote per our charter means you're voting yes on this, just so you know.
I'm abstaining from my vote, Ms. Wusso. You don't have to tell me what my vote is. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Wasting my time is what you're all doing.
Councillor Stepp,
Yes.
Mayor Godus,
No.
Councillor Davis,
No.
Councillor Wusso.
Yes.
It passes 4-1.
Charlie, thank you so much for the work you've put in on this over the last literally year and a half. Shelley, thank you for bringing this up to our attention 3 years ago. I didn't vote for it, but it was just perfunctory, and I really appreciate all the work everybody's done and that we're finally done with it. All right. Report from city administration.
I was going to ask you guys if you would consider the night we were going to have the airport listening session. If you still have the night open, if you would be willing to do a work session for the council members who are super interested in it, to help me really get it where you guys want it to go, because in reading your emails that you sent, I think that would really help me, because you're not aligned. And I would like us to be aligned, because I know this is super important to you and I don't want to get it wrong. So it would really, really help me.
What was the date? Was that January 19th or?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think if we're online, having hopefully a 15 to 20 minute, probably a half-hour conversation on kind of how we would see this to give Deborah direction, I think is, if she's asking for direction, I'm more than willing to help her out with that.
We'll have Bree and Jen and we'll talk through all this. We'll talk through it all. And I promise I will never ask you guys to do this again for a listening session, but this one feels different.
Can you send us dinner?
Yes, I will send you dinner from my money.
I support it.
What's everybody else feel like? Okay.
I'm good with it. I'm just clarity. We're talking about this work session agenda planning that you've been trying to get us to coordinate with.
Listening session for the airport.
You correct, Deborah? I just want to make sure I understand what we're talking about.
The listening,
everybody
the listening
froze.
session.
Am I still here?
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. The listening session for the airport. Like you guys have different ideas, and I just want you to have an opportunity to talk through those different ideas and talk to Bree, and let's talk about how it actually really works, because you're far more interested in this one than you've been in any other listening session we've done.
I see. Okay, thank you.
All right, Ryan, let's call the question.
No motion.
Oh, I'll make a motion that we do a half-hour listening session with Bree and Deborah on January 19th to work session, excuse me, so that we can help determine a appropriate listening session in mid-February.
Second.
Right, been moved myself, second by Paula. Ryan.
I just honestly think I'd love to do the half hour, Jonathan, but hell, we talked about this for an hour this morning. I don't think it's going to happen in a half hour.
I'll amend my motion to say that half hour is aspirational.
All right, that's fine.
Okay. Right.
All right, Counselor Wusso.
Yes.
Counselor Stepp.
Yes.
Counselor Hershey.
Sure, why not?
Counselor Davis.
Steve's at the club, it looks like.
Steve, he says yes.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Willman.
Yes.
Mayor Godis.
Yes.
Counselor Kaup.
Yes.
It's unanimous, 7-0.
Anything else, Deborah?
That's all I got. Huge thank you to staff for all the snow cleanup and everything else, and to you guys for all your patience through that as well.
It's a great job. Deborah, can I ask, there was a memo from the BLM. Do you need anything on that?
Oh, that's just, do you guys want to be a participating agents or not? I told them I would ask.
Nobody can be that stupid. Sorry.
Oh.
So that is just, do you guys want to, we did it, we were a participating agency, or I might be saying it wrong, for the, RMI mine expansion. They reached out to us and asked if you wanted to do a similar process for the sage grouse discussion. So.
What does that take from us? What commitment?
Last time it was me going down to Silk with Richard and Carl's office and sitting there for 8 hours a couple
If
times.
it's you doing it, that sounds fine. No, I'm kidding. Like, you don't have 8 hours to sit in a meeting. Maybe Carl does.
Not particularly. I would say that on the sage-grouse issue, I mean, pragmatically, the city of Glenwood Springs doesn't have quite the same interest as we do in the RMI mine. Not that it isn't a super important issue, and in my other role as a landowner, it's a hugely important issue up on our big ranch. But you know, I don't know that this is one that warrants time in staff time or legal fees.
And is it specific to that one issue? It's not a broader environmental rules for the land. Okay.
It certainly isn't anything I'm saying we need to do.
Okay.
Just if you guys want to.
I think we have plenty to do, or you have plenty to do. And it's not in our backyard right now. That's my opinion.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor is not saying anything, so I'll just keep taking.
No, I'm looking for somebody to either support or contradict, but I think that our silence is indicative of our lack of support for pursuing this.
I would agree.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Deborah. City Attorney?
Nothing.
Okay. Correspondence, incoming, outcoming. Hey, guys, Happy New Year. Here's
Motion to
looking for
adjourn.
a great 2022. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Any
Happy New
opposed?
Year.
See you guys.
Night, guys. Thanks so much.
Okay.